Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Became Dragon of Dragons. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Why am I falling? I try to open my eyes yet all I see around me is darkness. I try to move my hands yet I felt nothing. I could no longer feel the sensation of touch nor smell. All that I could see or be was in the darkness. I felt weightless, almost like a feather falling from the skies. Yes, like a feather from the wings of an angel or fallen angel. For sure, I felt a chuckle escape me. At first I began to wonder why I was here. Why wasn't I with my friends helping them against the hero faction? Helping them face that man, Cao and his forces. On my left I felt a distortion, and as if the world around me could hear my thoughts, it opened up a small window. The window was like looking through a mirror, but on the other side I saw, to my surprise, myself looking up into a pair of slightly worried brown eyes filled with panic. It was that of a small girl with long black hair and was dressed in a gothic Lolita fashion. Yet in her hands was my own hand covered in a shade of crimson. My BLD. My BLD seemed to burst out from my arms, staining her clothes and hands, yet she paid no heed as she tried to wake me up. It was as if the girl was trying to say something, yet her words didn't reach me. Her grip on my hand trembling, yet I felt nothing. Who was she? Ah yes, I remember now, it's all coming back to me. My attempt to rescue Issei in my last battle against Shalba Beelzebub. I defeated the BSDRD and killed him, yet in the end I let my guard down. Because of that mistake, he pierced through my scale mail armor with an arrow infused with the BLD of the Dragon Eater, Samuel. Yes, my carelessness caused me to be pierced with an arrow infused with the BLD of my greatest natural enemy. The BLD of Samuel, unlike my rival Vali, who could survive it thanks to his line of demonic heritage tracing all the way back to the original Lucifer. I had no such luck, therefore the BLD was incredibly lethal, and judging my current situation, I must be dying. Or am I already dead? I'm not so sure anymore. What an idiot I am. I should have been careful to the end, damn it. You would be ashamed of me, sensei, letting my guard down like that at the bitter end. I guess this time I won't come out of it. No miracles will come this time. I feel hollow empty and no power, no energy. Nothing. Strongest Sekiryu my butt. I'm not strong, I'm weak. Now that I think about it, I've always been weak. I let Rainier kill me, let her kill Asia for her sacred gear. I was weak against Riser, and because of my weakness I made Riaz cry. I couldn't even scratch Cockabeel when he threatened my home and friends, and even against Vali, who is always leagues ahead of me. Tan and Asen you would surely be disappointed in me right now. My weakness almost led to Asia's death, and the thought of her dying led me into a berserker rage, prematurely activating the Juggernaut overdrive within me, cutting my lifespan down to a third of the original devil lifespan. The way I went into such ferocity, tearing apart Shalba for the first time, venting my rage, my sorrow, my hatred and anger on that man. Senpais of the past you may have been wrong. The Juggernaut overdrive surely felt like I was actually in control, that I wasn't weak. For that moment I felt I was truly powerful. Then when we faced against Loki, my first confrontation with a god, I was so outclassed and so greatly overpowered, and I only escaped death by the skin of my teeth by Loki's pet, Fenrir, the wolf of legend whose fangs could kill gods. Even when it was a god, I thought I could help my friends, yet I was saved by Vali. It wasn't that I wasn't grateful to Vali, but the fact remains I was powerless to do anything. All of my fights, against Cao and his true Longinus, the spear that killed Jesus Christ. My battles with the other young devils like Sari Orgsan. Against the man that played Asia's horrible life rom behind the scenes, Deodora Asteroth, I should have killed him for causing her so much pain. Fighting the Chaos Brigade and the hero faction, saving Kanu's mother, Yasaka, from their hands. All of it had me go into a fit of rage when I saw my comrades fall. I never defeated them with my own skill. Just my overwhelming rage fueling my power. Nothing more. Damn it. Oppai Dragon. What a joke. Yeah. Why was I fooling myself? My DMN teenage HRNI getting the better of me. I could have used that time for better use instead of focusing on something so trivial. I could have strengthened my bond with D-Drag and worked to MSTR my power and train my body to handle the effects of my boosted gear. I could have been of better use. I could have become something more than some breast-loving dragon who's hated by girls for being a pervert. Sirzech, I am not fit to be the hero to the children of the underworld. I am pathetic in every sense of the word. I am just worthless. So this is it, I am going to die for real this time. And no miracles to save me. I watched the scene play out as Issei did whatever she was trying to do, but clearly my body was in far too much damage. I watched her in surprise rip the flesh from Great Red, and while infusing her powers tried to heal what was left of my body and rebuild it. Yet it seemed Samuel's curse was too strong and began to destroy my body. Seeing my veins burst from the inside and my BLD beginning to turn black was a rather disturbing sight. Truly, Issei, thank you for trying. Though I didn't know you for long. You still tried. You poor girl. You must be so lonely. I am so sorry for leaving you like this. Your friend. My last friend. I deeply apologize. I was going to show you the human world. take you and buy you ice cream, watch cartoons, enjoy all of Asia and Ria's food and delights, let you meet all of my friends, and make ones for yourself, maybe sweet little Kanu, and you would have been good friends. Make it so you would learn to know living really meant, to have a fulfilling life outside the dimensional gap. I am so sorry, off ice. Then I saw another mirror appear on the side, and the sight that greeted me was so painful to watch. It was my friends I made in my short life, the entire peerage of Ria's Gremory, along with Azazel Sensei, Ravel Phoenix, Tannen, a former Dragon King, Vali Lucifer, my nemesis, and my childhood friend, Irina Shidu. It seemed like Sensei, Old Man Tannen, and Vali were trying to summon me back using the Dragon Gate. Sorry guys, this idiot isn't coming back this time. I won't be able to come back home with you all. I say this, and soon I felt a bitter smile form as I looked upon the faces of all my friends, and of the woman I love. You may not be able to hear me, but I should at least say my piece, yeah. Gasper, since you are still at the Grigori HQ trying to work on your powers, I'll just say this. Remember, as a man you must stand up to protect Rias and to help fight with everyone on your own 2 feet. Cast aside your nervousness, level up from your box, and become a man worthy of respect. I say this while remembering my little cross-dressing Kuai. Tiba, my best friend, remember our promise: if one of us should die, the other must stand and protect the girls. I always hated you for your handsome looks and your popularity amongst the girls at school, but now that I look back, I couldn't have asked for a better friend than you. Even though that one incident when you became Yumi did freak me out a bit. I said, remembering that scene of Yumi when I was sick that one time. Zenobia, where do I begin with you? You're even more reckless than I am, and that's saying something. But I regret not being able to get closer to you, all of you girls. I should have taken that step further and gave you the chance to know motherhood. Our children would have been a handful, that's for sure. Yet I digress. You are a strong woman, powerful as the wielder of Durandal, and though you are reckless, you are both brave and courageous. I dare say besides being appealing, your warrior spirit was so breathtaking. He meant every word, and if he could have cried he would. Regret began to fill his being as he continued on. Asia, my dear Asia, we've been through so much together that it makes me choke a bit to know I'll never be at your side again, protecting you as I've always had. I never did give you a serious response to you wanting to bear my children like Zenobia, did I? Another one upon my pile of regrets, I suppose. Then again, maybe I wasn't worthy of such love from you, such devotion and admiration towards someone like me. I know without a doubt my passing will hurt you so much, but please don't do anything drastic. Live your life to the fullest. For me. Rossways, though haven't known you as long as the others, I've at least come to know you by many things, especially during our trip together in Kyoto. You showed so many sides of yourself. It was cute to see you act more girly at times. Your power was incredible, and it intimidated me a bit, making remember to not get you angry. Yet, you always let the old man Odin get to you with his words about you not having a boyfriend. I feel you will have one. You are very appealing and strong. Whatever man you choose shall be lucky to have you. Though I pity the poor guy when he sees you drunk. You're just a big lightweight. I smiled a bit as scenes of seeing her blush when I took her on an outing to the 100-yen shop flashed in my mind. Adorable. Kaneko, my cute little Kuai, your senpai won't be able to fulfill his promise to you. I won't be able to give you children. I won't be able to make you my bride as you wanted. I feel so horrible leaving you with my death, but I know you're strong, very strong. Though you may hate her, you still have your big sister, Kuroka. I feel she isn't all that bad of a person, just misunderstood. And hey, you have the others. You don't need a perverted idiot like me. You deserve more than me. Damn it, why did I let myself get killed off like this? Now I know for sure Kaneko's gonna be in so much pain. Because of me. Akino, I guess you won't be getting that affair you always wanted. I'm such an idiot. I should have taken that date of ours more seriously. Make it so what time we had together more memorable. It seems I only caused more pain for you and everyone else. I can't imagine how much my death will affect you, but please don't give up. Your Kuai has just made greatest mistake. A fatal one at that. I should have done more, let myself open up more to you and the girls. For that, I apologize, Akino. I may be an idiot, but I knew Akino loved me, but it was so strong to open up to her or any of the girls back then. I was planning dates for them when we returned to the underworld. But that won't happen now. Irina, you were such a tomboy when we were kids. I always thought you were a boy when we were young, but now that I look back I should have known. All those sneaking glances, those blushes when I thought you were sick, the way you cried like a baby when you moved away. What kind of childhood friend am I? And now I'm going to make you cry as well. You were always so energetic, so emotional. When we met again after so long, I was happy that you found something to occupy your attention. I was worried that we may become enemies due to our differing races, but it never happened. I didn't care, but you you were being you, Irina, and that's the Irina that I don't want to ever change. Goodbye. Ravel, unlike your brother Riser, you acted both like the Aju-sama you were, but also like my own Kuai. When you came to the human world and started living in my home, I welcomed you with open arms, helping you learn the basics at school and letting you and Kaneko meet. It was surreal to see you making friends. Even though you two were at each other's throats, it was still nice to see you smile, a true smile. Then the face of the woman I love appeared before me, her long appealing flowing crimson hair and blue-green eyes which captivated me to her the very moment I met. Rias, my love, I can finally say it now at death's doorstep that I love you. Rias Gremory, I love everything about you and more. I regret never being able to take our relationship further. I regret not getting over the wound Rainier caused me so I could have opened myself up to you sooner. It makes me so mad that I won't be able to stay with you, to love you, to embrace you and hold you, to marry the woman I love, to have kids with you and the girls, and have a family. I regret not giving this to you so much that I want to scream in anger. But it is my fault for letting this happen. I just wish that when I died, I would be able to see you one more time. Goodbye, my love. Goodbye, Rias, my queen. Then as I said that and the mirrors vanished, I felt what was left of my existence begin to fade away into the darkness. I looked upwards into the darkness, my sense of sight growing dull as everything began to go blurry. The world around me, the realm of darkness, began to distort as I felt myself start to fade into nothingness. So this was how the Oppi dragon shall fade away. Sorry kids. Seems I won't be there to make you smile anymore. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Just as I felt myself completely vanish, a voice pierced through the darkness. The voice of someone both strong and powerful entered my ears. Whoever it was, his or her voice commanded authority yet held a surreal tone of gentleness. What? Then all I saw was a flash of blinding white light. The light was so intense it cut away at the darkness instantly. I tried to look to where it was coming from, but the light became too strong and soon I had to close my eyes. It was only when the light began to subside that I warily began to open them, but what greeted me when I brought my hands down was not something I was expecting. I expected myself to be in a realm of pure white or something like that, but instead, why am I in outer space? I screamed in shock as indeed I was floating amongst countless twinkling stars. Familiar planets like Venus, Mars, Saturn and even the giant sun were in full view. Yet he felt no heat from the sun, even with how close he was to the sun. But just before he could say anything else, he heard a very familiar voice echo from his left arm. It honestly brought him to tears. CLCK, Zoom, Eohan. He could hear it clearly, the saddened voice of his partner, the legendary heavenly Welsh dragon, D-Drag. His voice was numb to the world, carrying so much gut-wrenching sadness. Issei felt like crying more as his partner repeated the last chant of what the children sang at his former TV show, The Oppi Dragon. D-Drag. The great D-Drag bawled its eyes out inside the gauntlet while sweat drops began to appear on the back of his head. Scratching the back of his head, Issei let out a small sigh before placing his palm over the green jewel. D-Drag. It's me, calm down. The dragon within froze once Issei spoke again, and silence went on for a good long moment until the green jewel FLC heard briefly as if showing D-Drag's disbelief. Yes, D-Drag, it's me. D-Partner, you're alive. The jewel flashed brightly, showing D-Drag's overwhelming joy at the revelation that Issei was still with him. Well, Issei wasn't entirely sure he was alive, but he still had D-Drag with him, so that's what mattered. Just as he was about to respond though, he felt an incredible force go through him, yet it wasn't oppressive in the slightest. It actually made him feel relaxed, safe even. The power felt familiar though. Tensing up, Issei swerved around to look for the person who spoke, only to blink in surprise when he saw a single glowing white orb floating before him. The object was very small, but the power it gave was no less impressive. Who are you? Issei asked, causing the orb to FLC a bit before it suddenly started to float around him, going up and down as if it was studying him. However, it was his partner, D-Drag, that spoke, which garnered Issei's attention the most. This was the first time Issei had ever strong D-Drag speak with so much anxiety and apprehension before. Hey, God. It is in the biblical God. Issei's face contorted into unrestrained shock as the orb seemed to FLC curve before it came up to the green jewel housing D-Drag's soul, and it seemed to chuckle due to its FLC curring. The orb spoke, but it was strong for Issei to believe that, since he knew that God had been known to despise snakes and dragons. It was said that was why he turned the entity, Samael, who tricked the first humans Adam and Eve to pluck a fruit from the forbidden tree of knowledge, into a dragon and imprisoned him, all because of his sheer hate for the two species. It also didn't help that he now knew it was this deity that tore apart D-Drag and Albion's original bodies to pieces during the Great War. He's God, but unlike Loki's presence of a Norse god, this guy orb doesn't feel oppressive at all. Just gentle, but firm. What is this? D-Drag spoke, asking a question Issei was sure many would like to know if they knew the god from the Bible was still technically alive. Especially Michiel, Zenobia, Irina and Asia. They'd be overjoyed. The orb just FLC curved for a moment before it bobbed up and down as if acknowledging D-Drag's words. Issei blinked 3 times at what God just said. If what he just said was right, then his respect for this deity just went up a few notches after all he went through before nearly dying. Still, as he looked around himself, he wondered why was he here. And it seemed D-Drag read his mind and continued with his question. God, or the orb just glowed white for a moment before it came up to Issei's face, making it seem as if the god was looking directly into Issei. God said as he floated around Issei. Issei's eyes went down at this, so he really was dead then. At this, both Issei and D-Drag's eyes widened beyond belief. Wait. What do you mean by ancestor? I thought I didn't have any noteworthy demonic or heroic ancestry, he said in panic, and you couldn't really blame him since he'd been led to believe he had been ordinary from the beginning. He knew no one important or noteworthy was in his family tree. So what was God talking about? This time the orb stopped and floated a few feet away from Issei. It then began to let off a small golden light within itself. As the light grew, God decided to speak, answering Issei's inquiry. The golden light began to grow and grow before the orb went over the green jewel that was his booster gear. He said before that golden light shot out from the white and transferred itself into the sacred gear, easily going into the very depths of the gauntlet's consciousness. Issei for his part felt as if his jaw would fall off at any moment. All his life he thought he was normal, albeit with an embodiment of all things perverted, but that was all because of his abnormal childhood of learning of Oppi from the pervy old man and his teenage HRNE. He thought he was just an average guy with no special heritage to speak of. But who would have thought he actually had such a heritage as this? So wait a minute. I'm related to an alien god. Drake spoke with a small sweat drop as heard this bit of info. Then Issei had to ask. The question bugged him so much since it felt like God was to brushing off this question for so long. Why are you doing this? Aren't I dead? What use is this if I'm no longer alive? He said this since he was sure his body was long since dead and he was just in a spiritual form. God seemed to stop for a moment before it flashed a brilliant shade white light which blinded him for a moment. Then it faded, allowing Issei to see that he, Drake, and God had moved through space and were now hovering over a familiar planet. It was planet Earth. Before Issei could speak, a gold bolt of light shot from the orb which hit him. He didn't know what it was because there was no pain, only a slight tug within him. What did you? God said to Issei's shock, but then Issei saw his vision begin to blur as he was forced to look back down at the earth below him. What's happening? He shouted in panic, but God continued on, seemingly shrugging off the teen's anxiety. Wait. Wiitttt. But it was too late as Issei's vision soon tunneled as he felt himself shoot down to earth so fast that his vision became tunneled. Watching his spiritual form go, God floated in the deep depths of space before the orb FLC curd as if it were chuckling. With that said, the orb that was all that was God FLC curd before it dissipated into nothingness. Using all its power, the deity had to save Issei from death and send him back. So it was with that, the biblical God had died fulfilling its debt to an old friend and in return had sent the man of miracles back in time. Earth. Issei's scream continued as he plummeted down at the earth. His vision was all a blur as all he saw was the incoming planet. He broke through the atmosphere and was soon coming into a familiar continent that was his homeland, Japan. He continued to travel until he reached a familiar town, his old hometown, shooting across the sky which looked like a shooting star to many others. Issei's spiritual body soon came upon his old home. Upon entering his old home, the last thing he saw was his PRGNT mother before all was darkness. Please tell me I am not in the place where I think I am, Issei thought to himself mentally as he opened his eyes to see himself in a closed-up space. It was barely lit, with only the occasional thrum of a heartbeat and the slight redness of blood and flesh being the only thing he saw and felt. Yup, Hayato Issei had awoken inside his mother's womb. Ooh, this is weird, very, very weird. Yeah, at least I can hold the title that I was the first baby to train himself inside his mother's womb. Oh man, this is so weird. And thus the now unborn yet conscious Hayato Issei began to strengthen his reserves while inside the womb of his mother. Joy, Mrs. Hayato hummed a happy tune as she made her way through the hall in her home while carrying a basket of clothes. The woman was merely in her late 20s with long dark brown hair tied in a ponytail with two long bangs falling down the sides of her face. Her brown eyes twinkled happily as she headed upstairs to her son's room. The thought of her and her husband's pride and joy brought a smile to her face as she came to his door. Their son, Issei, was such a cute baby boy when he was born and such a good child too. He baffled the doctors since he only cried once when he was born. After that he was such a quiet baby who grew into their 6-year-old bundle of joy. Issei listened and learned right from wrong at a good pace, and to their surprise showed he was smart for his age when he learned his alphabet at 2, learned to read at 3, and even learned to write at 4. Such a show of intellect had made them rejoice and hope that their son would grow into a very intellectual man. Scholarships, universities, graduation, although Issei does seem to not get along well with other kids besides Irina. I don't know why it is, but every time we get called down to the school it's because he gets into fights. Although I guess I can somewhat accept it some of the time since it's either he's beating up bullies older than him or protecting Irina. That last thought made her smile a bit more. Oh yes, her son and their neighbor's kid Irina Shidu had hit it off the moment they met. The two children just CLC'd the moment they met, and since then they were almost inseparable and had become very close. Irina was a real tomboy, and she and her son always played around, from climbing trees, playing hide and seek, to playing in the mud and playing tag. Mrs. Hayato smiled as she went to open the door to her son's room. Indeed, her son and Irina were incredibly close. So close, in fact, that she and Irina's mother often made play dates for the two and often spoke about the two becoming boyfriend, girlfriend in the future. The thought was surreal to her. Issei, Ta-san's here with some clothes. Upon looking into her son's bedroom, she saw that it was clean, which was a bit abnormal for a child his age who usually always made a mess. Yet her son was smart enough to clean up after himself. His room had everything he needed: a full-size bed, a dresser, closet, entertainment center, and a TV. There wasn't much decorating his walls, making his room seem very Spartan. Then her eyes landed on her 6-year-old son, and when she saw him doing push-ups on the floor, she let out a sigh. "Akasan, thank you. I'll put them up now," Issei said, hopping up off the floor before going over to his mother, whom laid the basket down on his bed. Mrs. Hayat, who began helping her son take out his folded clothes and began to put them away. However, she glanced at him every now and then, and a worried frown made its way across her face. There was another thing about their son, Issei, that made him stand out from his generation. His hair was a tad long with a few spikes jutting out a bit. However, he mostly had dark brown hair with streaks of black, which she and his father theorized came from his grandfather on her side of the family. He was average in height for his size and had a healthy tan, but it was his unique muscular build. The day he was born, the doctors had been surprised to notice his muscular structure was far above average newborns. They were worried it was some kind of abnormal growth, but since he hadn't shown any signs of change, the doctors had said that he was just a very, very healthy baby boy. But that's not all that made him stand out. It was also because of his love of fighting. He began to usually watch wrestling shows besides cartoons with his father. Shows like UFC and MMA, which she thought was far too violent for him, but he seemed to really enjoy watching it. And seeing his childlike awe in the show, she just couldn't bear to say no to him. This fascination of fighting eventually led to his father deciding for him to join their town's local martial arts dojo. She was against it at first, but Issei had been overjoyed at the prospect, and seeing as the sensei of the dojo allowed for students to start at the age of 5 to 6, she consented to it. Since then, her son had been going to school with Irina, and afterwards she, or if his father wasn't busy, would take him to the dojo afterwards. And she had to admit he took to his training very seriously, as he always did physical workouts his sensei allowed him to do. And she supposed she was proud of the fact his sensei often complimented their son for his talent in martial arts. She just hoped he never abused it. "Thanks for the help, Kasen." Her son's voice broke her from her thoughts, and she gave a smile and nodded towards. "You're welcome, Sachai. Now remember, Irina's coming over for supper and to stay the night, okay?" she said, reminding her son of that fact. Her parents were going out for a night out and asked her if she and her husband could watch Irina for the night, which she gladly accepted. After all, Irina was like a daughter to her. Issei's eyes lit up and nodded excitedly. "I got it, Kasan." Smiling at his enthusiasm, she ruffled his hair. "Good, then get washed up, she'll be here soon," she said, making him nod. Then taking the basket, she walked out, leaving her son watching her leave his room with a smile. Then as soon as his door closed behind her, his smile dropped into a frown before the boy dropped face first to the ground, only to catch himself. Then he continued his push-ups without restraint. The inner spirit of the heavenly Welsh dragon, Dreg, spoke to him from within his mind. The 6-year-old Issei just grunted before rolling over, where he began to do sit-ups. "Dreg, you know me better than anyone else, so you know the difference that sets me apart from regular children." Dreg finished with a mutter, causing Issei to mentally nod in agreement with his partner. I don't know what it is, but I've just come to love fighting so much now. Hell, it's been replacing most of my thoughts to the point my FTSH for Oppai is becoming non-existent. It's just so much fun now. I wonder if it has anything to do with my alien heritage." The dragon said, which was true. He did find some strange enjoyment when fighting Vali and Ria's cousin, Sarayorg. "True, but I gotta thank Dad for allowing me to do martial arts. It's a good way to vent my frustration from the idiots at school. Plus, it's a good sport for me. I just hope I don't become a battle maniac like Vali," he thought with a sweat drop. Finishing his sit-ups, he rolled back on his stomach. Pushing himself up, he began to do push-ups again, only now alternating with one hand each time he pushed himself up. Issei felt his frown deepen and had as he continued his exercises. "They bullied Irina, Dreg. Kids older than us and picking on people smaller than themselves makes them lower than scum. You should know I protect my friends above all else," he said, which the dragon agreed with him. On multiple accounts, Issei had proven to always fight and protect those he cherished, even against those many times stronger than himself. But that's one of the many reasons why Dreg respected and saw Issei as his best host. Finishing his exercises for the day, Issei jumped up only to fall onto his bed. As he stared up at the ceiling, he raised his left hand and looked at it. Narrowing his eyes, he focused what energy he could muster, but all he saw was the slightest apparition of his booster gear, which faded as quick as it came. This caused him to sigh before he closed his eyes for a little rest from exercising. "No changes. It's remained the same. I can barely muster up enough energy to bring you out in spectral form, Dreg." This had been something he had tried many times, testing to see how much energy he could bring out while still alive as a human, but so far it stayed the same, resulting in him only being able to call up his booster gear in apparition form. He wasn't mad about it because God had his reason for putting the seal on him. From all that he now had, he was sure his human body wouldn't be able to handle the strain. Seeing as his soul had the imprint of Great Red's and Offai's power, Dreg's soul, Ascalon the holy sword that slew dragons, and finally his mysterious alien heritage. Yeah, he was sure his body couldn't take the strain of all that. Maybe one of those descended from the heroes of myth, but not him. Sighing, Issei opened his eyes only instead of looking up at the ceiling he was starting to see the faces of his friends. Tiba, Gasper, Kaneko, Akino, Irina, Zenobia, Asia, Sariorg, Sona, Surzech, Kanu, Ravel, Roswace, and Offeyes. He reached up trying to grasp onto those memories, but they soon faded, causing him to frown deeply. Clenching his hand, he grit his teeth and swore to himself in his mind one solemn oath. Yes, none of you know me. Irina only knows me as her childhood friend. I thank you, God, for sending me back, because now I will use this chance to become stronger. Strong enough to surpass everyone. Strong enough so no one can threaten my loved ones ever again. Whatever the cost. Diedrag spoke in concern, sensing from within the depths of Issei's soul the thrum of his unwavering determination, the very same that made his existence echo across the supernatural planes. Yes, I am perfectly fine, Diedrag. The Welsh dragon remained silent after that, choosing to just accept that and get some sleep. Sensing this, Issei nodded before he heard his mother's voice. Issei, Irina's here, come down here and wash up. Upon hearing that, Issei quickly masked his frown and brought up a brightened expression. Jumping off his bed, he ran out his door while answering his mother. Coming, Kasen. Hours passed until it was night out, and under the roof of the Hayadu residence, the two 6-year-old children lay in bed inside Issei's bedroom. It was common for the two to sleep in the same room together, which their mothers found to be adorable because it showed just close the two were. It was in this room that while Issei lay in his bed still awake while Irina was sound asleep beside him, his eyes were staring out at the window above his headrest. This had become a common thing for him at night, just staring up at the moon. Reason for it was unknown to him, but now that he reborn, he felt some strange pull every time he looked up at the moon. It was a soothing yet strange sensation which was at its peak when the moon was full. The pull was at its strongest then, and it had its effects on him. Diedrag always said he was rather moody on those nights, and would toss and turn in bed as if he were in a nightmare. He didn't know what it was about the moon, and he even thought at one point that maybe his alien heritage was the reason, and that maybe he was a part of some werewolf alien race or something. Crazy, right? Yeah. Unknown to Issei though, Irina was indeed watching him from his side. Her violet eyes watched him curiously as he stared up at the moon with such an intense gaze. Slowly she scooted closer to him until her hand reached his cheek. Issei, are you okay? Flinching at the sudden touch, Issei looked to the side to see Irina's eyes boring back at him, filled with curiosity and a bit of worry, but for that moment Irina swore she saw his own eyes seemed glazed over with a pigment shade of red. You were awake? He asked, which she nodded, causing him to sigh. Blinking, Irina saw that shade fade from her best friend's eyes, causing her feel relief in that. But when Issei saw her worried pout, he grasped her hand, which made her blink before he pulled her close. This caused her eyes to widen as well as making her cheeks turn pink as Issei placed his other hand on her head. Don't worry about me, Irina, I'm fine now, let's go to sleep. He said this and she nodded into his chest, her hands clenched into the fabric of his shirt. But the way he spoke made it seem like her childhood friend, Crush, was sad. Why do you sound so sad, Issei? The girl thought to herself just before she let her eyes drift before finally closing, succumbing to sleep just as Issei had. Laying asleep and in his arms was possibly the most comfortable thing that young girl felt at that moment. It was on that night though Irina burned the abnormal behavior she felt from her friend deep within her mind. Falling fast asleep, the two and Issei's parents were completely unaware of those watching them, for standing outside the Hayadu residence were two cloaked figures. They both wore a full-body white cloak with light blue and gold linings. A hood shadowed their faces, but the pair of white angel wings cemented the fact they were not human. The first one looked to the other and nodded his head. It was for a moment, but the mission to watch over Michael-sama's person of interest, Hayadu Issei, has proven beneficial. For I sensed the slightest spark of a scallon. It was only a moment, but it was there. The first angel spoke while the other seemed to agree with a nod. One of the four holy swords, a scallon, the dragon slayer sword once wielded by St. George, had disappeared from heaven. Michiel, their current acting leader of heaven, and the archangel issued a search for the sword while he pinpointed its general location in this town. After extensive search, Michael had found out that it disappeared on the date a newborn had been born, and the only baby to have been born on that date was Hayadu Issei. Yes, let's report back to Michael. He will want to hear that the holy sword, a scallon, has definitely chosen its wielder. We must let him know that the mortal, Hayadu Issei, is indeed a potential interest. The second angel, female by her voice, said, which the first agreed with a nod. Hi, let's be off. And with that said, the two angels vanished in a golden light, not noticing the slight shimmer a few feet away from them. The shimmer fluctuated before it faded, revealing a single gruff-looking man with a muscular build. He also had black hair and facial hair. He was dressed in a black shiakusho and sandals, but a total of 10 black angel wings were let loose from his back. Scratching the back of his head, the fallen angel, Barakwil, sighed as he cast his gaze from where the angels once were before they looked down at the Hayadu residence. Diamen gotta hand it to Azazel. His object to hide my presence from Michael's angels worked out well. Plus it seems I've learned just what exactly has caught Michio's attention so greatly. So, Hayao Issei, same age as my little girl Akino, and yet he's a mortal that's been chosen by a Scallan? Hey, interesting indeed. Scratching his chin, the man seemed to nod his head before he vanished in a spiral of black energy, leaving only a single black feather to fall before it sizzled to ashes. Next morning, Issei, Irina time, wake up. Mrs. Hayao came up, opening the door to her son's room. Only when she turned on the light she covered her mouth in surprise at the scene she saw. She did her best to hold back an awe when she saw Irina hugging onto Issei, whom was holding her close. Quickly, but quietly, she pulled out her phone and took a picture of it before sending a copy to Irina's mother. Oh, she will be thrilled. Okay kids, rise and shine, she said, only to laugh when Issei grumbled and pulled the covers over him and Irina. It was later in the morning that we find a wide-awake Issei eating a bowl of cereal along with a groggy Irina. As he dug into his cereal, he missed the glance he received from Irina, whom, remembering last night, blushed a bit, which his parents caught, making his mom smirk knowingly while his dad tilted his head. Turning to look to Irina, Issei's mom spoke. By the way, Irina dear, your mom called and said after breakfast you need to come back home. It seems important. Okay. The girl titled her head, but nodded anyway. Then his father looked to Issei. Issei, why don't you take her back? He asked, which Issei looked up with a mouthful of cereal. Blinking, he nodded before digging back into his cereal, causing Irina to giggle while his parents sighed. There was that one thing about their son, and that was his table manners and abnormally high metabolism. That was his fifth bowl of cereal after eating 2 plates of pancakes. Swallowing it down, Issei stacked the now empty bowl upon his stack of dirty dishes before jumping out of his chair. All right, well, you ready to go, Irina? The girl nodded after finishing her breakfast. Hopping out of the chair, she followed after him while waving at his parents. Thank you for letting me stay, and thanks for supper and breakfast, Mr. and Mrs. Hayao, she said while the adults waved her by. Once the 2 kids were out of sight, Mrs. Hayao sighed before a smile made way on her face. She's such a good girl. I know she's a good match for our son, she said, causing her husband to nod agreement. With the 2 children, as Irina came out of the house, Issei closed the door before the 2 began walking to her house. It wasn't that far, since it was less than maybe 3 or 4 minutes away. But as the 2 got onto the sidewalk, Irina looked Issei's way before smiling. She surprised him when she took his hand in her own, making him look her way, then down at their hands. At that moment, Issei remembered his solemn promise to himself just yesterday, and because of that his eyes glazed over with a steely determination. I remember this day. This is the day Irina's parents tell her about moving to England. I don't want her to move, but I know she will be much safer away from this place. She'll meet Zenobia while gone and become the strong woman I knew. Still, I can't let her leave without something to remember me by. Drake asked, wondering what his partner had planned. This, he surprised Irina then by intertwining his fingers with hers while a smile made way on his face, causing Irina's cheeks to redden from the intensity of Issei's expression. It increased when Issei looked her way, and for a moment she swore she saw his eyes glaze over with that same pigment shade of red from before. Caught staring into his strange glowing eyes, she blinked in surprise when he spoke as they got closer to her home. Irina ... let's always be the closest childhood friends, okay? He asked to her confusion, but when she heard that same saddened tone she felt compelled to comfort him. Whatever it was that was making her childhood friend sad really was bugging him. She wanted to just stay with him and make sure he wasn't sad anymore. Irina just smiled, brimming with all the innocence she held within her, and just nodded with a hum. You bet, we will always be the greatest of friends. And she meant it. She couldn't admit it to anyone but herself that she had been crushing on her Hayao friend. However, she still wanted him to know that they would always remain friends. She didn't know exactly why he was saying something this strange and so suddenly, but she would assure him all the same. It wasn't like anything bad was going to happen to separate them or anything. Right? Issei smiled at this, taking her words too hard. As childish as they may seem, it still assured him that they would remain very close despite whatever the future held for them. And so when he and Irina reached her house and got to her door, he stopped just before knocking. Turning to Irina, he surprised when leaned down a bit, since he was a tad taller than her, and pecked her on the forehead. This caused her eyes to widen in shock and caused her face to lighten up to a good shade of red. She looked at him as he pulled back, only to see a strange smile on his face. It was almost painful to see his smile at that one moment. Issei, she spoke, only to see him shake his head. Patting her on the back, he just scratched the back of his head with a nervous chuckle. It's nothing, Irina. I just felt like doing ... I don't know, something for us. Remember, our friendship is all hey, he chuckled while she blinked before joining him as she erupted into a fit of chuckles as well. Yeah, I won't ever forget. Glad to hear it. Issei watched her go to the door. Opening the door, she stepped inside while announcing her presence. Ka-san. Tu-san, I'm home. As he watched her go, Issei's eyes widened when he caught sight of 2 cloaked figures inside the household. They wore the same clothing as Zenobia and Irina once did in his first life. As soon as he saw them, he remembered all the CRP he and his friends went through because of these people. The surge of anger was so intense it made his hands up into fists. The Holy Sword Project was funded by the church ... by these people ... the same project that conducted human experiments on life, humans, children, and the elderly even. His memory went to Kiba, who had been the sole survivor of the project, and dealing with the man responsible had angered him. However, it was worse that he had to watch his childhood friend, Irina, go with these people, which made him all the more angry at both himself and those associated with that damnable project. Maybe he was being blind to the fact that the church as a whole excommunicated the man and all those that dealt with the project in his first life. But the fact remained they still let it happen. Up to that point it became a genocide of innocent people, right under their very nose. His eyes narrowed as one of them looked back at him, only for their eyes to widen when they found him staring, glaring back at them. For briefest moment he instinctively held back the urge to attack. His power was sealed rigged now, and he couldn't go attacking strangers in Irina's home, no matter how much he wanted to reduce everyone associated with that project into a bloody smear. However, the stare was cut off as Irina came back to the door quickly. He masked his expression as to not scare Irina. Sorry, Issei. Kasan says there are some things to talk about, so ... Clearly she was uncomfortable to leave him alone, but Issei, while fighting the urge to do something, anything, just waved his hand. No worries, I'll just see you later then, okay. He said this, but he knew it wouldn't be happening. You betcha. Clearly unknowing of what will be spoken inside her home, agreed to those words, not knowing that would be the last time the two would get to spend time together as childhood friends. Completely unaware though to Issei was 3 pairs of eyes following him back to his house. Sickened grins made way onto their faces. One cackled in twisted glee. The third of the 3 figures cackled as a black and red aura glowed around the person's body. Heaven, unlike hell, or as it's also known as the underworld, was what many mortals would picture it to be. A kingdom built upon the clouds, making it seem as if it were hovering above the earth, ever watching and always vigilant of all mankind, when in fact it was like the underworld crossing the dimensional gap into the earth. It could only be entered by the iconic white stairway which reached the golden gates. For those that had died were allowed passage through heaven's gates. But for the forces of heaven they were allowed free passage if heaven's very own barrier recognized them as one of its own children. Heaven itself was beyond the golden gates, a vast floating kingdom that defied the realms of logic, for it was built upon a sea of clouds that stretched for miles on end. The heavenly kingdom was built, however, with a uniqueness, since it housed the souls of billions. Beyond the gates was another stairway which was the purest of gold, and it just reached further up into the golden and white sky of heaven, which reached all the way to the center of the kingdom. On both sides of the massive stairway was what appeared to be a number of countless floating metropolises that were built with a mixed Western and Eastern architecture. There was countless of them, each with their own different design, and they spanned far and wide across the divine domain, while all of them were connected by pearl-white bridges. It was impossible to count how many of them were, due to just how vast it was, and while compared to the underworld, which mostly landmass. Heaven was built upon just an ocean of clouds, the polar opposite of their enemy realm. Then came the center of heaven, the centerpiece that held the realm together. At the end of the long stairway which reached higher into the sky was an even greater metropolis. It was far bigger and more widespread, for it was a giant kingdom of gold and white, with a great number of angel humanoids walking around and hovering above the buildings, some wielding spears and lances of pure golden light, while others held a number of swords glowing with golden divine radiance. These were the angelic forces of heaven, charged with safeguarding the realm of heaven and its denizens. And among the kingdom stood a giant divine spire which seemed to pierce the very sky of heaven itself, making the giant structure to be bathed in holy light. This was where the most holy of locations was placed in heaven. This was the place the biblical God himself once resided. Atop this spire was the golden throne itself. However, with the biblical God dead, a well-kept secret from the souls in heaven and those of the 3 factions, the golden throne was now occupied by the second best person to fill God's role. And that was Michael, the only archangel, God's first creation, who was the leader of the angels and the remaining seraph. And with the Holy Father long gone, he was the now acting God of the Christian mythology. Michael had the appearance of a handsome-looking man with blonde hair and green eyes, and he was dressed in ornamental clothing befitting his position. Currently, Michael's normally peaceful expression was marred with a look of deep contemplation as another angel standing his side listened in on the report being given out. This angel was in fact Michael's sister, Gabriel, another of the seraph. She was extremely appealing, with long curly blonde hair and deep blue eyes which held a level of politeness that would make even the most cruelest of creatures beg for forgiveness for their sins. An air of humbleness came off her in waves that not even some of the greatest of angels could give off. Currently, Gabriel was tilting her head in curiosity as the debriefing went on. So from both of your reports you had indeed sensed the presence of the missing holy sword, Escalon, within the mortal boy Hayatu Issei, is this correct? Michael questioned 2 of his angel brethren, who nodded their heads confirming his words. Yes, Michael-sama, Hayatu Issei, the one we were charged to watch over, has shown to be holding the Escalon within him. We don't know what the child did to bring it out, but we both felt that familiar divine energy come from him. There is no mistaking it that Escalon resides within the mortal at this very moment, said the angel, which made Michael close his eyes while letting out a sigh. I see. The female angel of the duo then decided to speak up. If I may, what should we do with this information, Michael-sama? Michael merely smiled at the 2, though it seemed tired and away, before waving his hand. Do not worry, you 2 have done an excellent job. I'll think on what to do about this, so for now you 2 just go and rest. While conflicted, the 2 stood straight and bowed their head. Hi, Michael-sama. And with a flash of light the two vanished from the spire, leaving behind the two, one in contemplation and the other in slight curiosity. To think that Ascalon would finally choose itself a new wielder after so long. It's been 2 millennia since Ascalon was last wielded by St. George, and since his death it's never left the realm of heaven. The sword never let anyone wield it, not even the finest of heaven's forces, but instead it chooses a human boy with no heroic heritage or Christian ancestry to speak of. Michael said this while Gabriel thought about it herself. Ascalon never left the realm of heaven after its original wielder passed away, and many angels had tried to see if they were worthy of wielding the holy sword, yet none were successful. It was one of the 4 holy swords created by God, and while it was considered not as powerful as its brethren like Excalibur or Durandal, it was still no less unique in its existence. For it was the only holy sword to have slain a dragon, which were considered gods in their own right. But I think that makes it even more interesting. Out of everyone it chose the soul of a newborn mortal who holds no connections to the Christian mythology. That must undoubtedly make this Hayao Issei an interesting person, even if he is a child. If the dragon slayer sword, Ascalon, chose him over the best and faithful of our forces. Very interesting, the appealing woman said with a smile forming on her face. Michael seemed to agree as he nodded at her words. True, and from other reports about the boy it's shown that he is a rather unique human than the rest, because every human has at least some form of network of energy running through them. However, his has shown to be non-existent, with it barely running at the required state to keep him alive and active. Hayao Issei barely has enough energy to keep him alive, and yet Ascalon chose him. And that's not even adding in the fact of what sacred gear he possesses, he said with a small frown, while Gabriel's smile if anything grew at that. Oh yes, that's right. It would seem he also possesses one of the 13 Longinus sacred gears, the boosted gear or the Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet. Strong to believe that sacred gear has appeared in the world again, and in such an intriguing person as this, Hayao Issei, she said while Michael eyed her for a moment before agreeing with her. Yes, he'd first found out about that upon the very first report he got from his angels that were watching over the boy. The legendary sacred gear was sensed within him the moment he was born, which was an ill omen itself, since the history of that gear along with the other was not a good one. Still, the boy interested him greatly, for such an existence like this hadn't been recorded in history, where such a contradictory soul wielded both the boosted gear, which held the soul of the heavenly Welsh dragon, Ddraig, and the dragon slayer sword, Ascalon, in one body. It was just such a paradox of 2 opposing elements in one soul. It made Michael feel a small shiver go down his back at what would happen if the boy actually MSTR the powers of his sacred gear and the power of Ascalon. The future seemed an interesting one. Michael, I request permission to see this, Hayao Issei, for myself. Gabriel's sudden request made him blink in mild surprise before he looked to his sister with that same amount of surprise and a bit of curiosity. Gabriel rarely ever left heaven unless it was for official business that needed someone from heaven's higher echelon, and when he was busy with maintaining God's system, she was there as his representative. Besides that, she was usually called upon for missions that required her abilities and leadership. Besides that, she never left heaven and watched over it and made sure that it was kept stable, and her assistance with the matter had proven most helpful since their Holy Father died. For her to want to go showed Michael that Gabriel must be very interested in this soul to go to Earth herself. Still, as he pondered on it, it did present itself as an opportunity to learn more about this perplexing mortal. Looking to his sister, he didn't see much harm in and spoke, "That sounds like a good idea. It would be good to learn more about this new generation's security. Plus, since he's still young, he must not have come into contact with Ddraig, so if you do meet him, the dragon won't alert him of who you are either." "Yes, go on ahead. You have a week's time to gather what you can about him, all right," he said, making Gabriel nod, accepting his conditions with ease. "Got it. I'll gather what I can, report what I find out." She said this, but inwardly the woman was bubbling with excitement to finally meet the boy. It wasn't known to Michael, but since she first heard about Hayao Issei being born at the exact same time Ascalon disappeared, had made her suspicious of the fact the sword had chosen him. Not only that, but the fact he was found out to be holding the boosted gear within him had piqued her interest in him higher than she would admit. He was a paradox, a contradictory to all of logic. He wielded the power of a dragon and the holy sword that could kill dragons. One holy and the other draconic in essence. It was just mind-boggling, and it had grabbed her attention the instant she put it together. So yes, the strongest and most appealing woman in heaven was excited to meet this boy that had grabbed her and Michael's attention. Well then, I'm off. And with humble smile she vanished, a flash of gold, while Michael looked at where his sister left before sighing. Then his sweat dropped as he looked to the other side and saw the ever-grow stacks of paperwork that never seemed to end. Well, time to get back to work, I guess. And with that, Michael continued to torture himself over the countless papers and documents detailing all the happenings of his forces and of heaven's stability. Earth Hayao residence. Issei, are you sure you're okay, son? Mrs. Hayao asked in concern over her son, who was silently eating breakfast with them. Today was a special day for her son since he had no school and his dojo was holding a tournament for the juniors to see who will reach the next belt grade. Which was why she made a big breakfast, but yesterday had been a strong day for everyone, especially for her son, since it was the day his childhood friend Irina Shidu and her parents had left to move to England due to needing a place for their daughter to grow with a more Christian outlook, or that's what she was told. She knew it hit her son strong because the two had been so close, inseparable really. But she and her husband were surprised when he just looked up at them and smiled the tiniest bit. "It's fine, Ka-san. We promised one another that we would definitely see each other again," he said with a grin which made her laugh a little. The innocence of children were such an appealing thing, and though she suspected it would be unlikely they would meet, it was good the two promised such a thing. She smiled, being happy to see her son was still in high spirits after that, and so she continued eating. Issei, on the other hand, dug into his breakfast, which consisted of a pot of steamed rice, another pot of miso soup, grilled fish, dried seaweed, soy sauce. However, due to his abnormal appetite, he was eating the equivalent servings to feed 5 people alone. Currently, he was digging in, and again his parents couldn't help but watch their son eat like he did. It was as if he were an animal or starved man with a bottomless pit for a stomach, gorging down bowl after bowl of rice and miso soup, his chopsticks moving faster than they could see, picking up fish, seaweed, rice, more fish, a loaf of bread. It was a disgusting scene, but they couldn't help but be awed by it all the same. Dedrag said with a massive sweat drop as Issei gorged down another bowl of rice in 2 seconds flat. "Shut up, I can't help the fact I've got the stomach of a black hole," Issei shot back at his nakama of a dragon who snorted. The dragon jokingly said, making Issei mentally blush a bit, but he conjured a mental pair of chopsticks and snapped at the dragon's tongue, making it grunt. Correction, she embraced me on the cheek, nothing more. We hugged, she cried like a baby, I did some waterworks and she embraced me like I did her the day before yesterday, he said, making Dedrag grumble, who retracted his sore tongue. Still, the equivalent of a smirk made its way onto his face. He suggested, making Issei sigh. Yes, Rias was his girlfriend and the woman he loved in his first life, but now that he had this second chance, Rias didn't even know who he was, and thus, she doesn't know me, so therefore I'm in the clear, and besides, I'll always love Rias. The Rias I knew, who may have been selfish to some degree, was still the first woman I wanted to marry and have children with. I loved her dearly and that won't change. But I'm thinking there's more important matters to deal with, don't you think? Like the Chaos Brigade, for example, he said while taking a bite of grilled fish. His tone went dead serious at that, which caused Issei to nearly choke of his food. Like hell I am, you overgrown lizard, he yelled while the dragon started to laugh hysterically at his frustrated host. So son, are you excited about today's tournament then? I hear it's going to be a big event, his father said, causing Issei to break discussion with Dedrag to respond to his father. You bet, the first 3 that do well will go up a belt and the first place winner will even get some prize money, he said, though it wasn't much, it was still something. The tournament itself was being held by his dojo and it was being used to test his class between the ages of 5 to 10, which was pitting them against one another. But it was an event that was a rite of passage for juniors, so it was being held at a Miko shrine where it would get the traditional Miko Kagura dance and blessing before it began. While it sounded all fine and dandy, he was in it for the sport. He wanted to see how far he could progress as a human and to see if his training had been worth it. This would also be his real fight besides the school fights he got into where he was allowed to hit people. The thought of fighting made his BLD pump and made him nearly jump from his seat in excitement. Dedrag said, which Issei agreed with, like Rias once told him, physical fitness was an important aspect as a devil and as a supernatural being altogether. Her cousin, Saray Orgbale, was a prime example of that. The phantom pain of his punches still made him flinch. But that won't be enough. I need to get stronger and stronger, strong enough to surpass everyone, strong enough to beat Cao Cao. I want to be so strong that no one precious to me will be hurt again, he thought as Dedrag listened to him, but inwardly he was thinking about his host, and a small spark of worry rose up in the dragon. I just wonder how far you're willing to go to get that kind of power. Looking at the time, Mrs. Hayato spoke up. Oh, it's about time to leave, Issei. Go get your uniform while I clean up, she said, making him perk up before nodded. Jumping off the chair, he ran upstairs. Seeing him gone, she looked to her husband, who gulped at her look. Honey, go and get the camera. I will not be missing this for a moment. A bit frightened at the look, he quickly got up and did as asked, which made her smile. It may have been about fighting, but it was her son that was fighting, so she was going to support him all the way. Miko Shrine. Holy CRP, Dedrag ... Am I reading this correctly? Issei thought to himself in shock as he read the plaque just outside the shrine. It detailed who this shrine belonged to, and the name made him nearly want to jump and shout in joy. His partner rumbled within his mind, but seemed to confirm it for himself. The dragon said, making Issei nod as he read what the plaque said. Heimjima Shrine. That means Akino is here. Right, Issei muttered to himself as his parents caught up to him. If this was indeed the same shrine Akino had grew up in, then that meant she might still be here, which meant her mother wasn't dead yet. The thought of maybe helping her save her mother quickly began to form, only for his parents to wake him from his thoughts. You nervous, son? His father said, patting him on the head, pulling Issei from his thoughts. Looking up at his father, the boy quickly shook his head before putting on a determined expression. No way. I'm pumped. His mind quickly went back to the tournament at hand. But dealing with the possibility of helping Akino this time around was still in the depths of his mind. I see, his father just laughed while his mother seemed a bit surprised at the amount of people coming to the shrine. There's a lot of people here. Did the tournament grab local news or something? She said, making her husband shrug. Who knows, hun? The dojo Issei is learning from is quite renowned, so those interested in seeing new talent may have wanted to come see it for themselves. Nevertheless, let's hurry up and get to the top so we can meet with his sensei. She nodded, and thus the family of 3 quickly made way to the top of the stairway. And what greeted them was quite the eye-opener, since this was Issei's first tournament. Even if it was a junior one, it was still impressive to see. The shrine looked similar to the one Akino lived in his first life, but the temple was much bigger and seemed to be big enough to house residents. Looking around, Issei saw that there were many parents talking with their children while the stage for the tournament was being finished in its setup. It was being put in the middle of the shrine grounds, which had a clearing for this occasion. The stage itself was basically a square dirt mound, but it was big enough to move around it, but it was obvious if you were out of the square you lost the match. It was one of the basic rules of fighting in an arena, but this was a tournament that showed what you learned and would allow you to show the fruits of your LBR. But with all the people here, it kind of reminded him of the rating game he had with Riaz against her cousin, Sarai Orgbale, and his peerage. "Oh, I see you're prepared, Issei." The familiar voice of his sensei garnered the attention of himself and his parents, and they turned to see a man coming over toward them. His sensei was in his late 30s with a muscular build, and currently he wore what he usually wore while not teaching. His attire consisted of a black yukata with a navy blue sash tied around his waist, while on his feet were a pair of sandals. He had black with gray streaked hair and a goatee to match, while he had normal black eyes. "Oh, why, yeah, kinda." The boy scratched the back of his head as other parents and kids near him heard the conversation and looked his way. He was wearing what all the other kids were, which was a white kikogi shirt and white hakama breathe. Tied around his waist was his orange belt, which he earned after every day of practice of going after school or on his off days. In addition, he had red wristbands on, and on his feet just a pair of sandals, which he could slip easy, for the battles would require no footwear when they began. But it was his abnormal physique that caught many people's attention. For a 6-year-old, he had on some definite muscle on his arms, and his shoulders were broad. His face was showing less baby fat, unlike his peers, and his forearms were pretty thick compared to the other kids. This was again something Issei couldn't help but think his alien heritage on. He hadn't even unlocked it yet, but it was showing changes on him. Scratching the back of his head, Issei chuckled nervously. Yeah, so how you doing, Hazu-sensei?" The older man just shook his head and pat the boy on the head. "Good, considering I'll be watching you, my students. Show me the results of your training. But I'm here to take you and your classmates to the shrine so you may receive an early blessing by the Miko of the shrine before the tournament begins," he said, earning a surprised look from him, but for a whole other reason. "Oh, okay." Agreeing, he went to follow his sensei as he gathered the rest of the students as his parents waved him off. "We'll be watching you, son. Good luck." Hearing his mother's words, he gave a grin and a thumbs up before following after Hazu. Strong to believe he's already 6 and already in a martial arts tournament. They really do grow up so fast, Issei's father said, while his mother nodded in agreement. While she didn't like the fact he was interested in fighting as a sport, it was still a sport which he loved, so it would be wrong to deny him that. Excuse me." The voice of a woman broke them of their thoughts, and they turned to see an extremely gorgeous woman with curly blonde hair and radiant blue eyes standing near them. The sheer appearance of the woman struck the two on the spot just by how appealing she was, more so Issei's father, whom his wife saw and smacked him over the head. She had a voluptuous figure and was dressed in casual clothing consisting of a yellow kimono that didn't do much to hide her perfect figure, while she had a gold obi around her waist. Her long curly blonde hair fell down her back as if it were made of the softest silk. Her supple lips spread into an innocent smile as she addressed the Hayarus. "Yes," Issei's mother replied, making the woman smile before bowing her head. "Hello, my name is Gabriella. I'm with the Kyoka Hospital, and I'm here to oversee anyone that gets injured. But I was just curious, was that boy just now your son?" she asked, making the two nod. "Indeed, it's his first tournament, so he's been training very strong for this," his mother replied, while Gabriella's smile grew at that before looking in the direction Issei went off to. Clearly, his eyes spoke volumes at how excited he was, she said, causing the two to raise an eyebrow. But they just stood there as the parents all gathered to in anticipation. They missed the woman's eyes glaze over as she went into thought. "As I thought, by being closer to him I was able to sense there was more to Hayaru-san than meets the eye. I definitely felt Dragandaskalen within him, but I sensed something else. It's so small, but it's there. What is it though?" "Temple shrine room." I'm getting nervous," mumbled one of the contestants of the tournament. It was a child around the same age as Issei. The class was situated inside the shrine room where they were told to sit so the Miko could offer her blessings onto them before the tournament began. The class was of a mixed number of ages from 5 to 10 with a total number of 16 kids. Hazu-sensei was sitting behind them watching the proceedings with a smile. Among the students, Issei was sitting as perfectly still as he could be, but he was jumpy, for at any moment he will possibly see Akino again. Sure, it may not be his Akino, but the fact would remain that she was here. And if she was here, then that meant her mother was still alive and the attack on her hadn't begun yet. To be completely honest, he was mixed about seeing Akino as a child because he pictured her as the one Sama of Riaz's peerage, the SDSD queen and the troubled woman who'd been scarred emotionally by the despair of losing her mother. Suddenly the door to their left slid open, jarring Issei from his thoughts as the voice of a woman spoke up. Hello children. I see many of you are eagerly wanting to start." Issei dared to look up at that moment, only to go slack-jawed when he saw the woman. There was no way he could deny it when he laid eyes upon the woman who go to the front of his class. The woman looked exactly like the Akino he knew, long black straight black hair and twinkling purple orbs. She walked with grace and elegance that only that of a well-renowned Miko could. She was dressed in the traditional Miko dress and it fit the woman very well. Then the woman bowed to him and his class with a soft smile as she spoke. "Hello children, and to you as well, Hazu-sensei. My name is Hajime Shuri and I welcome you all my humble shrine. I shall be performing the blessings and Kagura for today, so take care of me." Bowing her head, his class and Hazu-sensei followed her example. "Thank you, Miko-san," the class echoed in response, but then the woman reached out her hand to the direction she came from and spoke again, her smile growing ever more pleasant. Now allow me to introduce my daughter. She will be helping me with this ceremony. Come on out now, Akino-chan." Bump. Issei felt his heart race once he heard that name be spoken, and he dared to look to where he heard the soft patter of footsteps. Like many of his classmates, he turned to see a small girl meekly slide open the screen door, and as soon as he saw her, Issei had a near mental fritz. Cute. Issei mentally grunted while D-Drag just laughed at his host's expression. On the outside, his cheeks flushed just a tad as he saw Akino Hajime step out in the same style of Miko clothing as her mother, only for her size. Her long black hair fell down without the signature ponytail Issei was used to. Her violet eyes were bright with innocence and a tad bit of nervousness as she stepped out toward her mother while she held a basket of sakura blossoms. "Go on and introduce yourself, dear." Her mother spoke comfortingly, and looking up at her for a moment she nodded before looking to his classmates. Putting up a courageous expression and spoke up with a bow, "Hello, I am Akino Hajime, please treat me well." "Hello, Akino." The class responded in kind and some even whispered at how cute the girl was, but Issei mentally guffawed. They saw that now, but none of them knew the sadistic SDSD that was lying deep underneath that innocent exterior. If they knew, he knew without a doubt half these kids would sit themselves and the other half would run away crying. Shuri's smile grew before addressing the class. "Very good, now with Hazu-san's permission we shall begin the blessing and afterwards we can begin the tournament, so are we ready?" She asked Hazu, who nodded his head in response. "We're all set outside, Hajime-san." "Very good then, Akino dear, if you will." Akino nodded and began walking around while Shuri turned around and kneeled down, lighting 2 incense candles and began praying a traditional chant used to give good luck to all those that wished. As she did, Issei watched as Akino threw handfuls of sakura blossoms over his class, but as soon as she got closer to him, he looked her dead in the eye, catching eye contact with her, and for the sliver of a moment Issei saw his Akino deep in those violet eyes. Then he smiled at her surprised look before deciding to get one on Akino after all the teasing she did to him in his first life. "Thank you for the blessings, Miko-chan." Her cheeks flushed scarlet and she nodded his way before quickly moving on as Issei did a mental victory fist pump at finally getting one over Akino. It didn't matter to him that this Akino had yet to tease him, it was the fact his Akino had done it countless times that a little payback was needed. D-Drag snickered, causing Issei's brief time of victory to hit rock bottom as a horrified expression came over him. CRP. Before he knew it, the blessings were finished and Shuri and Akino stood side by side as Hazu stood in front of them now and began addressing them. "Okay kids, listen up. We will begin the tournament after Hajime-san has finished the opening Kagura. So in preparation, remember all your training, keep your reflexes sharp and wits even sharper, understand?" He grinned as his class roared in response, "Hi sensei." "Good. Now follow me so we can get to our seats and let Hajime-san prepare." The class nodded and soon followed Hazu-sensei out of the shrine room. But as they were leaving, Issei glanced over his shoulder to see Akino was staring at his back. So he just grinned at catching her, and it was all the better when he saw her embarrassed flush. Giving a small wave, he saw her do the same just before he left with the rest of his class. But unfortunately her mother, Shuri, caught that little interaction and she smiled when she saw her daughter's expression. "Was that a friend of yours, Akino? He certainly seemed like a nice young man," she said, only for Akino to shake her head. Putting a finger to her lips, the young girl titled her head as she thought about it. "No, I don't cuss in." Shuri looked at her daughter for a moment before nodding her head. "Okay then, now while I get ready, why don't you go find your father and watch the proceedings while I finish up the Kagura," she said while grabbing hold the ornamental mask she used for these occasions. Akino nodded happily before running to go find her father as Shuri began putting on the mask. Outskirts of Geo. On the outskirts of the town of Geo, deep within the woods and off the main roads, a single red rune circle appeared and glowed before particles of red energy began float upwards. The energy then began to combine into a humanoid shape which soon began to gain characteristics. The circle glowed bright red before the humanoid shape finally became complete. The figure stepped out of the circle, causing it to vanish without a trace. The figure was clearly male and he strolled through the woods with only the light of the sun lighting his features through the branches of trees. It was only when he came out of the woods did it reveal the man in all his glory. He appeared to be a handsome young man in his early 20s with shoulder-length crimson red hair and blue-green eyes. He had a healthy pale complexion and stood a good height of 5'9". He was dressed in casual clothing which consisted of mainly a black-sleeved shirt and a red denim jacket along with a pair of blue jeans, while on his feet he just had a pair of black tennis shoes. He looked ordinary enough, but this man was by no means normal. For this was the man himself, Surzech Lucifer, or simply known as the Crimson Satan. one of the four current Mao of the underworld and older brother of Ria's Gremory. Surzech smiled humbly as he trekked his way towards Geo with his blue-green eyes twinkling with a set goal in mind. "Aw man, and I was just enjoying my time with little Riatan and Kasan ... Oh well, may as well get this over with." Thus one of the two super devils made his way towards the town of Geo, having no idea what lay in store for him or for those in the town itself. "Oh, there's the kids." The shout of a parent sounded, causing the crowded parents to look and see the class coming out off the temple from a different part of the building. They followed Hazu-sensei while some kids smiled and waved at their parents. Parents took pictures and hollered good luck to their kids, but Issei looked to see his mother and father among them who doing the same. It honestly made him feel pretty good about himself, and he smiled a bit since this time around his parents were being supportive in something he liked. Unlike in his first life, they saw him as just a good-for-nothing lecherous fool. It kind of made him feel like a complete idiot for turning out that way the first time. Diedrag said, yelling out in pure joy that he didn't have to suffer that torment any longer. It was just downright painful, and it nearly killed him a few times at how bad it was getting. At one point the dragon was even contemplating suicide just to escape the perverted madness of Issei's first life. He was so glad his host's perversion was dying away and being replaced with his nearly maniacal joy to do battle. If he had to choose on what he would have wanted his host to be between the two, then he would take fighting over perversion any time of the day. Issei for his part mentally scratched the back of his head and gave the mental equivalent of a pat on Diedrag's snout. "I really am sorry for putting you through that, Diedrag." But then as they began to be seated at the arena mound, Diedrag's eyes narrowed as it sensed familiar signatures of energy. He said, making Issei blink, but taking his friend's words to heart, he discreetly began to look around as he was seated amongst his peers. It was around the time his class was seated that Issei caught on to three pairs of eyes that were watching him from different areas of the field. Looking to the side, he saw that the first was Akino, who seemed taken back when she saw him looking back. Quickly she looked away, so Issei then looked to the second person he felt watching him, and it was a familiar person. It was a gruff-looking back with black hair and facial hair. He had a muscular build and a fierce expression, but his beady black eyes were boring back at him. The two met eye contact, and Issei quickly realized who it was that was standing beside Akino. It was the same guy that nearly tried to kill him while on his date with Akino. It was Baraquil, Akino's father. "And is it me, or does he seem like he already hates me?" Issei thought with a twitch in his brow. Diedrag just laughed at that. Then Issei looked to the final pair of eyes, and he was surprised to find out that the person was pretty close, actually on the other side of the stairway. It was a woman, an extremely appealing woman that made what was left of Issei's perversion nearly rise up before he quickly crushed it. But there was no denying the woman was incredibly gorgeous, with her curly long blonde hair, radiant blue eyes that seemed to go on for an eternity. She had one of the most voluptuous bodies Issei had ever seen, and he'd seen many in his first life. She was dressed in a yellow kimono with a gold obi around her waist, while on her feet she wore simple sandals. But the minute his eyes made contact with hers, he felt a very familiar source of energy. Though nearly all of his power was sealed, there was no way he would have missed that familiar source of energy. Holy energy, so she's an angel, but what would an angel be doing here and in the territory of a fallen angel like Baraquil? Issei contemplated on that. Baraquil was of an equal status in pure power to his former sensei Azazel, and the two were close friends. He didn't doubt no one didn't know of Baraquil and his power over holy lightning. Diedrag decided to cut in on Issei's thoughts. You could only imagine the shock Issei felt at that moment when Diedrag said that. He mustered up all the self-control he had to not flinch or show the slightest bit of surprise in his eyes. His gaze stayed in contact with Gabrielle's before he offered a smile and waved, which she soon returned. DDRIG. Why is someone like her here? He questioned Diedrag, who he himself couldn't find a good answer to the question. Because he was equally puzzled as to why such a high-ranking angel was here in the mortal world and not making sure heaven was stabilized. He said, causing Issei to mentally nod before he turned his attention to the front of him. Soon enough, Hazu-sensei stood up and spoke using a microphone. "Thank you all for coming to this joyous occasion. I trust many of you parents are eager to see your kids fight and show their skill. As their sensei, I know they won't disappoint. They have all trained very strong for this, so you will definitely see a show you won't forget. Now before we begin, let the Miko of this shrine bless us with an honorary Kagura before the tournament begins." With the echoing approval of the gathered parents and locals that have come to see, Hazu bowed his head before stepping aside to stand with his class. Then all murmuring stopped as the doors to the shrine slid open, revealing Shuri, who came walking out in her Miko dress. But in addition, she had a mask covering her face along with two white paper streamers held in hand. All went silent as the Hinjima Miko came down the stairs with that air of grace and elegance rare few could match. It was as if she were floating, such was her balance that it fooled the eyes of many. Issei was not excluded from this, for he was just as much taken by just her stroll alone. But then as soon as Shuri reached the middle of the dirt mound with no footwear whatsoever, she began the honorary Kagura, a ritualistic dance used in both to worship the kami of Shinto and as a means to be used at any martial arts demonstration. So it was with that Issei decided to lean back and watch, letting his mind ease and body unwind as Akino's mother did the dance. The paper streamers seemed to come alive from her hands as they spun and twirled with her body as if they were dancing along with her. Then she started to sing, a song of good fortune and luck for all those that were fortunate enough to hear it. Her voice was soft and carried. Amongst the gathered people, children to adult, all listened and watched the display in fascination and joy. This is truly appealing thing, isn't it, D-Drag? Thought Issei as he was captivated by the Kagura, while D-Drag remained quiet, watching the proceeding with a sharp gaze. So mesmerized by the sight, Issei didn't see another altercation happening not just a few feet from him. Barakwil watched his wife and mother of his child, Shuri, proceed on with the ritual Kagura with a softened expression. These were one of the reasons why he fell for the mortal woman, because of her tenderness, gentle personality, and kind soul. Despite their questionable acts at night, he loved her dearly, and loved her more so for bringing their little girl, Akino, into the world. But then his eyes narrowed before his gaze slowly glanced to the side to see a familiar appearance of whom was once an old comrade of his, Gabriel, who was smiling tenderly as she watched the proceedings without the last bit of hostile intent being aimed at him for his status as a fallen. It put him on edge more than he would admit. He wouldn't care if they were in some other area, but this was where his beloved wife and daughter lived. The last thing he wanted was a fight to break out between him and Gabriel, thus endanger his family. So mentally he enacted a small telepathy spell, and it connected with Gabriel, who reacted with only raising a delicate eyebrow. Aurora, what it is you wish to speak about, Barakwil? She was the first to speak, which Barakwil responded with a mental retort. Why are you here, Gabriel? Has Michael finally decided to end my life? Has he sent you here to end me, or have you come to charge the churches in the area to do it? He answered back with a fierce scowl, but Gabriel's expression saddened the tiniest bit before returning to normal. Rest assured, Barakwil, I am not here to do such a thing, nor has Michael showed any intention to end your life. Whether or not you believe me is up to you, but we were all once comrades in arms, and we still hold that memory to heart. Does our former history as comrades, brothers and sisters under the Holy Father no longer matter anymore? She responded, causing Barakwil to scoff. It died the moment the churches began targeting my family. They can attack me all they wish, but they leave my family out of it. It's not very holy of anyone to attack a defenseless woman and innocent child now, is it? No, Gabriel, clearly Michael cannot fully control his people, and therefore I will kill anyone that intends to hurt my family, he said in spite, causing the woman to inwardly flinch at that bit of information. But you were never one to lie, you're far too sincere to lie and are too clueless for your own good. She put the equivalent of a pout while complaining the man, Moo, I am not clueless. She retorted only to get a slight scoff from the man. But then his tone went serious as the two watched Shuri nearly finish her dance. But seriously, if you are not here to kill me, then why are you here? You rarely ever leave heaven unless you need to act as Michael's representative or needed for a mission of dire importance, he said, only to get a chuckle from the woman. Well, you know, I can't say much, but let's just say I found a mortal that has interested me. That was all she said before the telepathy spell was broke, but it had a big enough impact on Barakwil, whose eyes widened in shock as they glanced to Gabriel's back before they quickly went forward. Could it be? Though impossible, Gabriel is the single most appealing woman in all of heaven and the strongest to boot. How could a mortal have gained her attention when so many greater figures of status have tried to gain her interest? No, I must be overthinking this, deciding it was better to not think about it. But then his mind began to race. Would Gabriel really be so interested in a mortal to risk leaving heaven and come down to earth? His mind began to run into various suspicions and scenarios that blew what Gabriel said completely out of proportion. The bottom line that resonated in Barakwil was solely thus: just how far would Gabriel go to sate her interest? And why did his gaze switch to the kids, more specifically, Hayao to Issei, as he thought about it? Amazing. Such a wonderful performance. Thank you for gracing us with such a dance, Haimja Madono. Barakwil was broken from his thoughts as Hazu spoke out. Shuri merely bowed her head in silence before moving off the mound and went over to him and Akino. Now then, let's begin the tournament, he announced, getting a roar of approval from the parents and those that came to watch. Nodding, Hazu turned to a small board being kept on a stand, and currently the board was covered by a white fabric. Grabbing it, Hazu pulled it off, revealing the order the students would fight in. Now, the fights have been selected at random and written down beforehand. We shall start with the preliminary half, and as you can see, the fights have been broken up in order from 1 to 8, with 2 students facing one another, and the winner will reach the semi-prelims. At the semi-prelims we will have a total of 8 victors from 16, and those 8 will fight to reach the final half of the tournament. The final half will consist of the semi-finals, and we will end up with 4 from the 8 after the semi-prelims are finished. The last 4 will fight in the semis, and the 2 that come out as victors will fight it out in the final part of this tournament. Now then, let's get on with the tournament. Turning to his students, he gave them a wink before reaching toward the board. Now we shall start with the first bracket. Hazu began to call up those chosen for fights. Issei just took one look at when his fight would begin, and seeing it would be the last fight of other half of the first bracket, he decided to just watch the fights proceed. He didn't make much friends with his class because of 2 reasons that diverted him away from his peers, so he didn't really talk with them. The first reason being because he took his training far more seriously, and he scared them a bit by how much and how long he trained for at the dojo. D-Drag added in his 2 cents, causing Issei to scratch the side of his face nervously. In my defense, that was the day I knew Arena was leaving and I was annoyed. Secondly, well, you have a point. He replied only for D-Drag to speak again with a monotone voice. He yelled out at the end, making a mental mini Issei shrink down as he poked his fingers. So yeah, maybe the other kids were petrified of him. It's why he had to hold back a lot of his current strength so he didn't accidentally break his peers' bones or seriously injure them. And the second reason was because of, D-Drag said, reminding him of the other reason he wasn't friends with his other peers. Issei didn't need to say anything besides giving D-Drag a mental nod, knowing that reason was something very important to keep in mind. He didn't want to accidentally kill these kids. Last fight of the first bracket, Hayato Issei vs Keiznawa Zu, both of you get into the arena. Hazu spoke up, causing the crowd to cheer and his parents to yell out his name. Shaken from his thoughts, Issei blinked before grinning. Seemed he was talking longer with D-Drag than he realized. Getting up, he walked up to the mound while looking to see the victors so far for this first bracket. It was mostly of children of ages between 8 and 10, which meant there only him and his opponent Zu, the last 6-year-olds left to fight. Issei felt eyes bearing down on him, 3 pairs of which he knew of, but he didn't turn to look. Instead, as he stepped onto the dirt mound, his grinning expression turned serious as he stared at his opponent, Zu, who stared back at him. Zu was of his age of 6 and showed a good talent of martial arts. He was his height, maybe an inch taller than him. He had a fair complexion with loose brown hair and brown eyes. He was dressed in the same uniform as he, but instead of an orange belt he had a yellow and no wristbands. Now please remove any footwear and we can begin the match. Kicking off his sandals, Issei tossed them to the side, which Zu followed his example by pulling off his own sandals. Their feet hit the ground and the two got into stance as Hazu began to speak. Good, now as a reminder for you two, the rules are fairly simple and easy to follow. But if you break any of them you will be disqualified. There are only 2, which are the following. No hitting below the belt of the groin area. Second, no poking the eyes or biting for that matter. If you are taken out of the arena, give up or don't get back up at the count of 10, then you lose. You kids understand. The 2 nodded, which Hazu took as the sign to begin. Very well, now then. Hajime. Hazu stepped back as he began the match and he watched as his 2 students got ready to fight. Zu slid into a normal stance he taught at the dojo, but with a slight variation, with squaring his feet further and pulling his arms further back. His eyes then went to Issei, who once again slid into the same stance he always used, and Hazu did admit it was strange on. Issei just turned his body to the side, his left was facing Zu. He then spread out his legs so his left leg was slightly bent forward, his right leg was stretched out a tad. His left arm was bent and his hand was curled up mostly, leaving only his middle, index and thumb fingers bent. His right arm on the other hand was coiled back and bent with a fully clenched fist. He bent his waist forward a tad and turned his head to his opponent, showing that he was giving Zu his full and undivided attention. His eyes are pretty serious. Show me something interesting, Hayato-kun, was the thoughts of the Seraph Angel, who glanced to the match as she patched up the minor wounds for the kids that lost. So his name is Hayato Issei, Akino thought with a tilt of her head. The name, to her confusion, rolled off the tip of her tongue as if she known it prior to meeting the boy himself. It confused her. Everyone watched with bated breath as the 2 kids stood still, all was silent for a moment, before Zu's patience broke first and charged with a quick dash, making Issei's eyes narrow. The boy came in for a jab to his face, but Issei blocked it with his forearm and countered with a jab to Zu's cheek. It hit him, but the boy spun around and swung his leg out to sweep Issei off his feet, but he jumped and flipped over Zu. Then once he landed, he kicked off the ground and dashed towards Zu's unprotected back. Go! He grunted as Issei delivered with a kick to his back, which he soon followed up with a punch to his stomach. Then he swept him off his feet. And before Zu could retaliate, he grunted once Issei's foot landed on his chest and about to bring down his fist. Yet at the last minute, Zu brought up his left leg and kneed Issei in the back. But again, with his incredible flexibility, he used the knee as leverage and pushed himself up backwards. Zu quickly jumped to his feet, but gasped when Issei backflipped and kicked off the ground and was already within inches of his face. His fist came in slamming into abdomen, knocking the wind right out of him with bits of saliva dripping from his mouth. Then the Hayato boy followed it up with a strong uppercut. This knocked his opponent off his feet and into the air. But even then, Issei surprised them all as he grabbed hold of Zu's feet and began to swing him around. Zu yelled until Issei hurled him right out of bounds. Keiznawa Zu is out of bounds. The winner is Hayato Issei, Hazu announced, getting an applause from the crowd, but an even louder cheer from Issei's parents, who were the most vocal. That's my boy, right there. His father roared in pride as his mother took pictures, causing him flush in embarrassment. Scratching the back of his head, Issei turned to his fallen peer and walked over to him, and in a silent gesture he reached out his hand. Come on, let's get you patched up, Zu-san. Taken by surprise at the gesture, Zu looked down for a moment before accepting Issei's hand. Thanks, Hayato. Pulling him up, Issei threw the boy's arm over his shoulder and helped him towards to the medical corner, which surprisingly had the same woman, Gabrielle, attending the injured kids. Gabrielle saw him coming and smiled. Just place him here, Hayato-san, she said, pointing towards a small bench where the others that were treated sat. Doing so, Issei helped Zu to the bench before he started to turn away. Thanks for the assist, Hayato-san. Gabriel said, which made Issei make the mistake to look her way, where he gazed into her azure blue eyes for just a single moment before he smiled. And no problem. Then he left, not noticing Gabriel's smile grow as her blue eyes just glowed a deep rich azure, her interest growing into excitement when she saw his eyes. His eyes for that moment were not the usual light brown, but instead the outer rim of his pupil was a BLD red and the inside was a light shade of red that was growing darker. It vanished as soon as it came, but Gabriel saw it, and it caused a shiver to go down her back. I knew it. I knew it. No mortal could have such a level of ferocity in their eyes like his. Even better, I didn't sense any influence from his sacred gear nor a scallon affecting him. That was all him, which means that Hayato is more than he appears to be, but the question is what? HM, you just continue to interest me. Completely unknown to what Gabriel was thinking, Issei went back to his seat as Hazu went on to the next bracket. His eyes took in to see that only 8 of them were left, but again he saw his fight wouldn't for a little later, so he decided to just watch. That is, until he felt someone come up to him. Hey Hayato-san. A familiar voice spoke up, to which he glanced to see standing beside him was Akino herself. Although once he looked her way, she started to fiddle with her clothing. A bit surprised at her appearance, but not unwelcome, he offered her a smile. Hey Akino-san, what's up? He said, suppressing the instinctive reflex to just call her Akino. It wouldn't do well to call her name with such familiarity, with her parents around nor alone for that matter. I just wanted to say that was a good match, and I was wondering if I could sit here and watch you fight, she asked, causing him to blink for the smallest moment before he looked to her parents, and he felt a sweat drop when he saw their varied expressions. Shuri was just smiling pleasantly, while her father, on the other hand, if he could, looked like he was ready to pop his head like a loon. But the nod he got from her mother was all he needed before looking to her. He didn't have a problem with it. He wanted to rebuild his relationships with the friends he once had. After all, they no longer remembered him. Sure, you can, and please call me Issei, okay? He said, scooting over a tad. He pat the bench, which she took while nodding. She could do that. She had to deal with enough formality with her mother's family, and thus the two just watched the match's progress, all the while Akino took sneaking toward Issei. He felt them, but just acted as if he didn't see them. But for him, he never saw the look she gave him being more and more intense. It was an intense gaze that got stronger each time she looked at him. Her purple eyes seemed to drink in his appearance and glaze over with the strangest sense of familiarity. Why does looking at Issei make feel so happy? This is the first day I've met him, so why do I feel like crying when I look at him now? It's weird. The girl felt her chest tighten more and more each time her gaze lingered on Issei. The thumping of her heart was almost too painful to bear without showing signs of it. Why did it feel like she's known him from somewhere before? Town of Geo Market Square. This was not his day. Surzech Lucifer sighed mournfully in a dramatic fashion as he sat inside a small cafe where he took another drink of his delightful cappuccino. The super devil of legend, renowned all over the underworld as being one of the strongest, if not the strongest, Satan in history. The man whose name caused even the greatest of demonic dregs in the foulest Stygian's pits of hell to hesitate. Felt like crying. No, he was crying. Graphia is so mean to me. Why couldn't they have just sent someone else out here? I wanted to spend time with Ryotan and Kasan, but knew they send me out here. Not fair, he exclaimed, complaining like a child. He slammed his fist on the counter, but careful to not shatter it in two. His state of emotional distress seemed to scare the other patrons and customers, but they were too nervous to even approach the man. Considering the fact it was a full-grown man acting and complaining like a child, their anxiety was understandable completely. Sighing, Surzech laid his head down as he thought about exactly why he was here. Now that he thought about it, there was a very clear and good reason why he was specifically sent personally. He wasn't happy about it, mind you, but it was still a serious predicament for both the Gremory clan and the Bale clan. His uncle, his mother's brother, Lord Bale, contacted his queen Graphia about a situation that needed dire attention. It was about a betrayal within the Bale family, which was aided by a number of other devils that had betrayed their noble families in the underworld. Devils that had grown tired of serving their kings and resolutely opposed a current generation of Satans, people that many came to call a part of the old Mao faction, which were a pretty big faction that clearly opposed the current Mao and all those that ally with them. But what made it more troublesome was because a part of the group that participated in the coup was a devil from the Gremory clan itself, a family that was well known for their extraordinary affection for all devils. The Gremorys never discriminated themselves with their servants like many other clans did, which is why they were one of the noble clans to be so well viewed by underworld society. This devil that betrayed his clan, a clan that took them in as part of the family, betrayed them, thus an equal amount of wrath had to be unleashed on the traitor. And he was from both families, which made it all the more troublesome, seeing as he was from both families by BLD, and as Satan, his uncle, said it was his responsibility to handle the situation. If not, it would cause a political mess of all sorts of trouble, and that was just a whole new pile of shit, which was something he really didn't want to mess with. So choosing the alternative, he hesitantly agreed to come to Earth, where the devil from Gremory and Bale clan had escaped with an accomplice, while the rest were said be handled by his fellow Satans. Stupid uncle, he's just being lazy, Surzech thought vehemently before he felt a tug on his consciousness, and soon a very familiar and scary voice sounded in his mind. It made him pale considerably. You are one to talk, Surzech. Lord Bale has specifically chosen you to root out the betrayers, and as the Satan hailing from both the Gremory and bail clan it is your duty to handle the matter. The voice of his beloved queen and wife, Graphia, nearly made him sit himself right then and there. But I didn't wanna. You made me and threatened to hit me with that hellish pan of yours. He thought with a shiver. Ever since they got married, Graphia's found an even stronger and more powerful weapon to abuse him with. A weapon that brought any man to their knees in terror. It was the ultimate tool. The frying pan of doom. Why was he abused so? Graphia seemed to ignore his words and continued to speak ever so elegant and graceful as always. Her tone broke no argument and was curt and to the point. Now I must ask, why are you just sitting there while 3 strays devils, one wielding the power of destruction and their Grimoire devil that can use a Grimoire clan technique to hide their presence from most censors, running loose? Surzech flinched, but tried and in vain stand his ground, which was probably the most foolish thing to do against Graphia. But Graphia-chan, Surzech. Right then and there the crimson-haired Satan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand straight up from his wife's tone. Oh man, she was getting angry. And an angry Graphia was a very, very, very scary Graphia. Okay, I'm going, honey. Drinking down his cappuccino, Surzech paid for it before walking out with a sigh. May as well get it done. Faster I do, the sooner I can go back home. Besides, it's not like anything bad's gonna happen, right? Heimjima Shrine. Hi to Issei as he looked up at the sky. The sun was started to set and the matches had gone fairly quickly for him, but for the other kids it was dragged out. Either to show off or they were just equally matched. His fight so far had been not all that difficult since his last 2 opponents had been terrified of him from the stunt he pulled in the dojo. But he supposed the time was well spent with either talking with D-Drag or speaking and trying to reconnect his relationship with Akino. Speaking of Akino, he glanced her way and felt a frown form on his face. He felt something was wrong with her as he saw her face change expressions every once in a while. And more than a few times he swore he saw that she seemed to be some type of pain. But it wasn't enough for her to warrant her parents to come over, even with her father watching him like a hawk. But there was another problem, which was with himself. The more he fought, the more he felt his BLD began to boil and rush through his veins. It was something D-Drag had warned him about, but he couldn't help it. It was just something that had come with him in this second life, something he blamed on his alien heritage. Whether he was fighting for an extended period of time or watching a fight, it made his BLD boil, made him want to just jump in head first and in the thick of it and just enjoy the thrill of battle. It had always been there, along with his fascination to stare up at the moon at night and his outrageous appetite. A change in himself that wasn't there the first time. The urge to do battle and enjoy it to the fullest was one of the first things he learned had changed in him when he was younger, and since then he had been doing all he could to control the urge. After all, he'd seen the result of what happened when he didn't control it, and it mixed with his annoyance. His control would slip and result with something that couldn't be done by humans, the punching bag being a prime example, breaking cement blocks and shattering a boulder in the woods with a single punch. And he knew that if someone saw him, a 6-year-old, do something like that, then it would only be a matter of time before he was taken to be studied and experimented on. He was just glad the punching bag incident was thought to be a freak accident due to the hook that held up being rusted and that the bag itself needed to be replaced. Currently, he was reining in his BLD influence the best he could with what assistance D-Drag could offer. He kept his eyes away from the fighting, but he knew that in his next fight, in the final match, he needed to end it quickly, which was now. And now we move to the final match of the tournament. His sensei spoke up, getting the crowd to roar in approval. Then he turned to the last 2 fighters. Good, now then, would the finalists come on up? He said, making Issei and his eventual opponent begin to stand up. But as soon as Issei did, he felt someone tug on his clothes, and he turned to Akino, who held a good grip on his shirt. Good luck, Issei, she said, staring up at him, and he just gave a smile. Thanks, Akino. Oops, he let his familiarity tone slip with Akino. Well, it wasn't like Barraquil would attack him or anything. He was after all a child. Well in body. Turning around, he went on ahead to the arena, missing the wide-eyed, glazed look he got from Akino, who was staring mindlessly at his back. But to the young girl, as Issei walked just that short distance, it seemed as if he was walking further and further away and into a field of fog. What? Issei. Why are you leaving? Wait. What? The young girl looked down, clutching her head for a moment, as in her mind Issei seemed frozen still, standing in a field of fog. Completely unaware of Akino's increasing dilemma, Issei got to the arena dirt mound and stood in front of his final opponent with Hazu-sensei standing between them. Hazu spoke to the crowd as he and his opponent eyed one another. Alright, it's time for the final match of this junior tournament. But before we begin, I just want to congratulate all the students that participated. You showed excellent skill and talent. Those that lost, remember you can only grow and learn from your losses, he said, looking to his students that lost, who some nodded and others were still depressed about losing. But then he continued, now then, let's welcome the finalists. On my right is Kazuna Jin and on my left is Hayato Issei. You two, I am proud you made it this far, and know whether you win or lose, be proud you made it as far, he said, whom the two nodded. Good, now then, Hajime, he said, stepping back. Issei narrowed his eyes as his opponent got into stance. He analyzed his opponent and cursed a bit, since Jin was older than him and had the advantage of size. He was a head taller than him and had quite a good amount of skill in the field of martial arts. He was his senior by 4 years, in fact. But Issei could feel his BLD rise to dangerous levels, and he knew that needed to end this fight as quickly as possible. Drake said, because this really was no laughing matter. If it got too high and his control slipped, then he may very well kill Jin by accident by pulverizing his body into a bloody smear on the ground. Scowling at that, Issei sighed before taking a deep breath. Looking to Jin, he narrowed his eyes, and the edge appeared in his eyes that made the older boy flinch. Jin, forgive me, but I need to end this quickly. So sorry about this, he said before getting into stance, the same stance used against Zhu. But now his muscles were coiled, knees bent like a spring ready to unwind at the slightest flinch. Jin unfortunately did not know what awaited him and just gave a shaky smirk, even if he was shaking at the knees from the look in Issei's eyes. It quite honestly made him feel scared, no petrified even. What are you talking about, Hayao? The poor boy couldn't even finish as Issei's body just reacted. His feet twitched, legs sprung out with his fist reaching out. Thwack. Faster than most could blink, Jin was trembling, taking shaky steps back from Issei's fist, nailing him in the chin with a vicious upper hook. The boy stood still for a few seconds before his eyes rolled back into his head and he fell back completely and utterly unconscious. It took a minute for the crowd to completely comprehend what just happened. 1 second the two were preparing to charge. But in the blink of an eye, Issei had crossed the distance with his fist reaching upwards, and then Jin fell to the ground unconscious. Many were confused at what just happened, as none had even seen Issei move, but there were those that had. As Hazu, who himself was shocked at the display, quickly went to check on his fallen student while Issei stood and turned around. It seems in a fist faster than we could see. Hayao Issei has completely knocked out his opponent in a single punch. Looks, we have a winner. Hayao Issei has won the junior tournament. Hazu roared as the crowd stood in stunned silence for a good few seconds before it finally registered with them. Oh yeah, that's my son, his father roared, and his mother surprisingly screamed with him. Yeah, I knew he would conquer this tournament. They shouted as the crowd roared in approval, having found the finisher while sudden and completely shocking, also very incredible. They didn't even see the kid move from his spot until after Jin hit the ground. But that wasn't the case for two people who stood stock still at what they had just witnessed. Baraquil's face was a mix of shock and a tad bit of suspicion as he narrowed his gaze on Issei. He saw it clearly, and it baffled him at how a kid at that could move that fast in this day and age and leave an afterimage in his wake. That's how fast the kid was. To the untrained eyes, to these mortals, he moved so fast he left an afterimage of himself where he once was. But in reality he moved so quick that their brain couldn't comprehend it fast enough. No one, especially mortals, have ever been that fast, not even the most trained. What the hell is this boy? His hands clenched into fists as his shoulders shook from both the shock and anxiety he felt rush through his body. Azazel needed to know about this now. However, Gabrielle, who was currently attending to the unconscious Jin, had seen it as well, and unlike Baraquil, she had a smile. No, it wasn't a smile, it was a smirk on the normally humble and clueless woman's face. Nothing could wipe this smirk from her face as she replayed what she'd just seen over and over in head. Her gaze swept from Issei, and the slightest of glaze of excitement and thrill flashed in her azure blue eyes. Hayao may have fooled the eyes of the humans, but I and surely Baraquil saw it. He moved far too fast for them to perceive, and in his wake left an afterimage. Not even some of the fastest demons or angels have shown to have such speed to do what Issei just did. Why must you interest me so, Hayao Issei? One after another you blow my expectations completely out of the water and do the impossible and completely abnormal. Who would have thought it would be you two make me feel so excited so thrilled for someone's potential growth for the first time in so many millennia. The Seraph Angel thought to herself before looking to Issei as he was congratulated by his parents after gaining his new belt and prize money. Yes, continue to grow, Issei. Show me just how far your potential can grow. Reveal to me what you truly are through strong work. I know you can do it now. I saw it in your eyes. Yes, you will shake the 3 realms with your presence. Grow strong, Hayao Issei-kun. She thought as she finished up healing the injured who were soon taken by their parents. With her work done, Gabrielle began to walk to the woods, only to tilt her head to the side as she sensed a familiar energy in the air. Smiling, she went into the woods and vanished in a flash of light. Baraquil, upon seeing this and feeling the same signature, narrowed his eyes and turned to his wife. Shuri, I must go and check on something. I will be back. Okay, dear. Coming to understand it was important from the urgency in her husband's voice, Shuri nodded. With her consent, Baraquil quickly walked out of sight before vanishing as well. With Issei, as he was about to leave with his parents, he turned to Akino and her mother, and seeing that her father was strangely nowhere in sight, he decided to act. Quickly he ran up to them and smiled up at Shuri. Thank you for the kagura, Shuri-san. It was very appealing, he said, bowing his head while Shuri's eyebrows raised before raising her hand to her mouth. Yufifufu, thank you, and let me thank you for gifting my shrine with such skill, Hayao-kun. Her comment of praise made the boy scratch the back of his head with embarrassment. You're welcome. Then he turned to Akino, who had remained silent till now, and then he patted her head to Shuri's slight astonishment. And thank you for talking with me, Akino. I had fun during those breaks. Maybe we can talk and play again sometime, yeah, he said with a grin which made Akino's cheeks turn red, but she gave a smile in return. Yup, alright then. Well, I guess I'll see you later then. Bye, Shuri-san, Akino-chan. he said before running back to his parents while waving to the two Heimjima females. Shiri merely gave a wave in return as did Akino, but her mother glanced down at HR daughter in a sly manner before smirking. "Oh, I didn't know my daughter got herself a boyfriend and so quickly too. I applaud you, my daughter," she said, causing Akino to freeze up before she snapped her attention to her mother, her face practically glowing beet red. "Tei-san," she yelled only for Shiri to giggle at her daughter's expression. "Oh, don't be embarrassed. He is quite strong and he can protect you, and he seems like he will be a reliable young man." "Yup, I approve," she said, giving a thumbs up only to add to her daughter's embarrassment. "Not funny, Kasin," Akino mumbled with her cheeks glowing a good cherry red. With Issei as he caught up to his parents, he got ruffle of his hair from his father before his mother hugged him. "Oh, we're so proud of you, son. Tonight we're going out to eat as a celebration," his mother said, and the thought of food right then made his belly let out a loud growl. He could already feel drool fill his mouth and he nodded his, "Okay, I'm starving, let's go," he said, racing to the car, causing his parents to laugh at his enthusiasm for food. Town of Geo Residential Square. Surpass Lucifer definitely knew today was not his day. Not only had he nearly incurred the wrath of his wife Graphia, but trying to find these stray devils was proving to be harder than he first thought. So far he'd been searching high and low, scouring the city for them, but it seemed the Gremory betrayer was very adequate in using one of his family's techniques to even be able to hide their presence from him. He'd searched the outskirts of the city, the woods, the market district, herbal area, and basically nearly every other place he could think of. He sighed before looking up at the sky. The sun had set and the moon was rising. A good full moon in all its splendor was rising into the sky, and for a moment Surpass just marveled the moon's beauty. Then he smirked when he felt two presences appear around him, two familiar ones he hadn't felt for a long time. "Ah, Baraquiel and Gabriel, to what do I owe the pleasure?" he said, turning to look to see both the fallen angel and the seraph angel standing a few feet from him. His smile was pleasant and his posture didn't change the slightest, even with two of the most well-renowned figures in the three realms stood before him. Baraquiel was the first to speak, although he glanced at Gabriel before doing so. "What are you doing here, Surpass Lucifer? Why has a Mao of your stature left the underworld?" questioning the devil, who merely raised an eyebrow before Gabriel spoke in turn. "Yes, I find myself curious as well. You are well known to never endanger the temporary truce we've had, so what has made you come out to Earth?" she asked, making Surpass just droop with his shoulders limp. "Would you believe me if I just said it was a simple stroll? That I just wanted to admire the sights," he said with a cheeky grin, only to get a twitching expression from Baraquiel and a slight chuckle from Gabriel. Clearly they just found his attempt to avoid their question annoying, amusing. "And not really, after all it must be important." Gabriel continued, getting a hesitant nod from Baraquiel. Surpass just gave another sigh before he massaged his temples. Okay, I'm here to hunt down a couple of stray devils that have betrayed a number of noble clans, including my own. They escaped the underworld and were reported to have escaped into this city, and I was sent to take care of them personally," he said, causing the two's eyes to widen in shock. Baraquiel because his family was in danger if stray devils are running loose, and Gabriel because her target of interest was in potential danger as well. Strong as he may be, he was still a child, and if these devils were so worrisome to send Surpass, then it was of dire importance indeed. I see, then have you not found them?" Baraquiel said, only to get a negative shake of the Mao's head. "No, I haven't, because..." Boom! The sound of an explosion rocked their ears, and their eyes widened before they turned to see far from them. Back in the woodland parks was where the sound of an explosion went off. "I think we found them," Surpass muttered, but then something even greater and more dangerous happened. A echoing roar blew across the area, causing a massive shockwave to hit the entire city of Geo. Glass shattered in every building in the city, and what unstable buildings were left collapsed under the shockwave. The area where the explosion occurred and exploded in a massive pillar of crimson red energy, with bolts of blue lightning dancing around the pillar of the strange energy. The pillar shot up, growing wider and taller till it pierced the very sky. The sheer amount of it bore down on the three of them and was causing the very ground beneath them to shake. No, it felt as if the very planet itself was shaking. But then it appeared. A massive giant garbed in shadow rose up from the woods currently set ablaze. The pillar of crimson energy engulfed the giant figure as if it was welcoming its MSTR. Its eyes snapped open to reveal BLD red orbs filled with an insurmountable amount of rage, hatred, and sorrow. The giant creature, titan almost in sheer height, glared down at them all of Geo with its baleful BLD red orbs, seeing all things in its path as an obstacle. "What the hell ... is that thing?" Baraquiel shouted as Surpass was frozen from just the shock, but Gabriel's eyes were wide as she saw those eyes look at her. It was then she knew, deep down inside her being, that she recognized those eyes. It was him, Hayaudu. The woman quickly flew off just before the two men regained their senses and quickly flew off after Gabriel. Whatever that beast was, it needed to be stopped before it destroyed the city of Geo. Earlier, this is so good. Thanks for bringing me here, Mom, Dad, Issei said while shoveling down food after food. Him and his parents had went to a restaurant near the city. It was beautiful, into the cliffs overlooking the city, and served all kinds of food, and the best thing was that it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Oh, this was going to be good. His mother just laughed while his father just nodded his head. "You deserve it, son. It's a well-deserved reward for all your strong work." she said just as his father continued. Like your mom said, you just won your first tournament even though it's junior ranked. We are very proud of Issei, he said, causing Issei to stop before looking up at his parents. Issei, his mom called out to him, but he was in his own little world. Tears actually began to form in his eyes at what his parents just said. They were proud of him. Their voices were sincere, full of pride and love for him. Unlike in his first life, all he did was take them for granted and never did anything to make them proud of him. But now, it was the first time he truly felt loved by his parents, where they were truly proud of his accomplishment. Thanks mom dad, he uttered, causing them to smile, glad to see their son was fine. But, Drake screamed within his mind, causing Issei to blink in confusion. Why? What? He was interrupted when the ceiling above creaked, then he felt it. Oh sit, mom dad mov. Crash. Issei's voice was cut silent as the ceiling above crashed open, causing it to fall around them. The support beam cracked before it shattered as well. The entire ceiling soon followed, causing it to come crashing down on everyone, crushing all those unlucky enough to be inside the building at the time. Smoke and debris billowed in the air as the screams and moans crushed by the ceiling echoed within the now destroyed building. Issei's eyes twitched before he opened them, only for his eyes to widen at the sight he saw. It was all the occupants that were just a second ago dining, talking, eating and laughing. They were all now crushed to death by the fallen ceiling, some having been impaled by falling slabs of wood while others were pulverized beyond comprehension. The image of all the dead people was being burned into his brain. The smell of the blood, gore and spilled and crushed organs made him lose himself right there. Uyuag. He puked up his guts at the sight. The smell was just horrible and his eyes felt hazy, his head felt light, but he had to find his parents. His eyes returned to life. Yes, his parents, he needed to find them. Surely they were quick enough to get out of the falling ceiling. They had to. That hope dashed when he turned to where his table originally was. His eyes widened more and more when he saw his parents hadn't moved. No, they didn't even have time to do anything. He knew it was his parents because their heads had been cut clean off by the sling of the debris snapping and pulling. Their faces filled with shock and terror stared back up at him, causing him to tremble. Tears pooled in his eyes. He at his dry lips as his mind tried to comprehend what he was seeing. Mom, Dad, he muttered, too shocked, too unguarded. Issei never saw the three skulking figures behind him until it was too late. Drake roared out to his partner, but Issei was too far gone to be reached any longer. Splurch. The boy didn't even react when a sickly-looking arm resembling a mantid's arm pierced his stomach completely through. No, his body just jumped, causing his head to look straight up at where the ceiling once was, and it was then his dull light brow eyes were reflecting the full white moon floating above him in the sky. The rest of his body hung limp as the three stray devil gathered around the unresponsive Hayaudu. Finally we have you, tasty morsel. One of the devils spoke, inhaling the scent of Issei's blood, which was currently pooling from his lips and the giant wound in his abdomen. Yes, his scented sweet powerful aroma. I must feed. Another stray hissed, only for the third devil speak up as he came in front of Issei. And to add further to their incoming demise, the apparent leader pulled up the two severed heads of Issei's now dead parents and grinned. Black and red power, the power of destruction, a trademark ability from the Bale clan, glowed from the person's body. Are you too shocked to even scream for us? Are these people's death that much a shock for? He said swng their heads as if the devil was just swng around a pair of buckets. That was the last thing they could or even do, as two things happened at that moment that marked their demise in that instant. 1. Issei's left arm instantly glowed a bright golden light, revealing an intricate patterned seal running all across his forearm and up to the upper part of his hand. It then shattered like glass, and then a massive shockwave erupted from his body which blew the three devils clear away from him. His body then erupted into a pillar of crimson energy which sparked with bolts of blue light, and the energy that came off him was suffocating as it was terrifying, as it caused the ground beneath him to be vaporized, and it formed an ever-growing crater beneath him. The energy became more and more intense, evident to the fact that the entire area was shaking. It was as if the entire planet was starting to shake by the release over this power. His body bulged, growing as all that he once was and that of his heritage was unleashed upon his body. His brown hair turned jet black, and among other changes, a single brown tail sprouted out of his backside. It was a monkey tail. And, 2. Issei was looking up at the full moon and his new tail was reacting. And then Issei's eyes pulsated into a shade of BLD red. Then all hell broke loose. Same time, Hanjima Shrine. Akino Hanjima tossed and turned in her bed, and she was sweating buckets as in her dream she was seeing the same dream again. A dream of Issei standing in a field of fog with his back turned to her. Issei, wait for me, she thought, trying to run after him, but he just seemed to get farther and farther away from her, and no matter how much she tried to move, it didn't seem like she was getting any closer. She tried to call out to him, but her words fell on deaf ears. Yet she soon stopped when she felt something strange overcome her. Snap! The Issei in her dream right then burst into flames, with the world around him exploding into a fire of chaos. Akino's eyes snapped open before she let loose a gut-wrenching scream that woke up her mother across the room. But even as Shuri came in and tried to speak and get Akino to wake up, the young girl kept screaming as memories of her and Issei rolled through her mind. Memories of her time with him, memories she never experienced but instinctively knew was hers, assaulted her endlessly. Soon tears began pooling from her eyes, her voice began to crack, and then as the last memory hit her, Aquino fell unconscious into the arms of her deathly worried mother. Aquino, Earth unknown location. A shadowed figure sat prone in a barely lit chamber. The figure's head seemed to rise up once it felt the abnormal power spike rise up from the earth. It titled its head as if contemplating on the source and feel of the energy before the figure seemed to nod its head. The figure then let out a sigh, then he or she began to stand up, causing audible cracks and pops in the person's body, showing whoever it was hadn't moved from their position for quite some time. The figure stepped forth, another step and another step, until part of its face revealed a withered, wrinkled lower face with green skin, then its eyes which opened to reveal beady black eyes, full of power and wisdom the likes of which none could perceive. The time has come then, the person said before he, she or whatever it was vanished without the slightest bit of sound. The figure just vanished into thin air. What's happening to this brat? One of the three stray devils spat. The one who punctured Issei through the stomach growled as it used its mantis arms to cover its eyes. The raging howling winds and quaking of the ground was so strong it nearly blew them away after the first initial shockwave. But the winds just kept growing stronger, and the ground was trembling more and more erratic by the second. All because of what happening before the three. The very source of this phenomenon was none other than their very own target. The supposed human, Hayao Issei. The boy was currently engulfed in a pillar of the purest crimson energy. Bolts of lightning danced around the pillar which pierced the very sky. The strangest thing was the fact his body was pulsating, twitching and bulging as increasing intervals. His body had changed from his brown hair had turned completely jet black and had spiked up in several directions. With his back to them they couldn't see what was happening to their target, but the occasional grunt and even growl was escaping Issei's mouth. And was it them, or was his left arm glowing an even darker shade of crimson? The second devil hissed, its snake-like lower body a result of abusing its own power, causing the mutation in its own body, slithered up, constricting to the ground in an attempt to her hold. The wind was that fierce and the quaking ground wasn't helping any better. How SSS should I know? Wasn't this brat SSS supposed to be easy prey? Did we awaken some kind of sacred gear or something? She hissed, only to bite back a scream as another pulse rocked the area around them, sending debris flying as Issei stood within the maelstrom of such chaotic power. The leader seemed to be the most shaken, and he tried to gather up the least bit of courage he could, but as he looked down at himself his eyes widened in shock. My body, it won't stop trembling. Is this fear? Am I feeling fear from a human? The sheer thought was ludicrous. He was a pure BLD devil from the Baal clan. He, with the inherent ability of the power of destruction, was scared of a human. Ridiculous. And yet even as he tried to move his body, his legs refused to move. His body disobeyed him and refused to move an inch, whether to attack or run. His body just wasn't listening to him. So overwhelmed with such primal terror, the devil along with his comrades was left standing there, frozen and completely immobilized by the fear alone. It was only when Issei turned around that they all three devils knew for sure of one thing. They were gonna die. For Issei's face was set in an expression of absolute rage. Hatred leaked off every part of his boy. The strange crimson power seemed to empower the boy. His body was pulsing and bulging at increasing intervals. His teeth were clenched, and to their increasing horror his teeth were turning into fangs. But it was his eyes. All they could see was a pair of BLD red orbs bearing back at them. Such was the intensity of his hate-filled gaze, the three devils could not do a thing. Their instincts raged at them to run, their souls were screaming to run as fast as they could possibly go, but their bodies just refused to do anything. Issei let out an inhuman growl as his voice started growing deeper. His brown tail quivered and moved in accordance to the transformation. It was at that single moment one thought was racing in the devil's mind as the kid, their target, began to grunt more and more. What have we done? What have we unleashed? Then their world went white as Issei's body expanded, ripping his clothes to shreds, his face changing and morphing. Patching of brown fur grew all around his body and face, and his body grew and grew, but the transforming boy reared his head and let loose a devastating roar. Issei's roar echoed whilst causing a massive shockwave to erupt from his body. The three devils were the center focus of the roar, which resulted in them getting hit by a frontal cone of the shockwave, which sent them hurtling through the forests of the outskirts of Jin. Smashing through trees and mountains, the three devils were clearly not be getting back up after taking such an attack. The roar's effect devastated the town of Jin. The city as a whole was completely unprepared for it. It happened far too fast for them to react. The once cloudy sky rippled and the clouds were torn asunder, and the ground beneath their feet rumbled and quaked. Caught unaware, they were unprepared for the shockwave that devastated the city in the night. Its blast radius ruptured all throughout the city, causing all sorts of damage, from toppling vehicles, leveling buildings, and for the most unfortunate of souls, they blasted clear across the city just by the sheer force of it. All from a single roar. The ground trembled as the cliffside in the woods of Jin cracked, causing mass landslides. But for Issei, he stood there roaring at the sky in his new form. He stood incredibly tall, passing just a 100 feet tall. His appearance was akin to that of a giant ape, only with a more muscular build of that of a gorilla, a baboon-shaped head along with its giant swaying monkey tail. Issei growled before turning its reddened gaze down at the city below him. Everything in his path was just an obstacle. Everyone was an enemy, all things had to die. They all had to die. Kill ... kill ... kill ... kill ... destroy ... slaughter ... obliterate. Issei's droned within his mind no longer in his control. The giant ape that was Issei let out another growl, but before it left, it turned its attention to where the devils were blasted off to. Grag! He howled before opening his mouth only to form a glowing bluish-white sphere within his massive jaws. The energy buildup was so great the shockwave of its creation caused the ground to crater. It was only when Issei was about to fire that Gabriel, Baraquil, and Surzech arrived at the scene. But it was too late to stop Issei, and Gabriel, feeling the immense energy welling up in the giant's mouth, quickly acted. Turning to the city, she channeled her magical power, creating a giant golden runic circle to appear. It then shot out a golden beam to the entire city of June, which soon expanded into a giant barrier that covered all of the city. "All of you get down," she shouted, which the two followed his example, and just in time as Issei let loose his attack, which came in the form of a high-density beam. It shot forth, easily vaporizing all the mountains and the forests that were in its destructive path. The beam of energy shot toward the location where the devils landed and were still trying to recover. And as the beam zoomed across the forest plains and mountains, all things erupted into destruction. It was like a nuclear bomb went off as multiple spheres of fire erupted across the path the beam zoomed past. Leaving a trail of absolute destruction in its wake, the beam instantly wiped out all life, including the three devils, completely obliterating them from existence. Not even their screams of terror could be heard over the thunderous roar of Issei's attack. It was only after Issei's attack dimmed and ended that the three would able to stand up, only to witness the destruction of the giant ape's attack. "Oh ... my ... god ... Gabriel uttered in shock, and the other two couldn't blame her. Baraquil was just as shocked, maybe even more, while Surzech's eyes were completely wide at the horrific devastation laid out before him. What was once a vast plain of mountains and forests was now just reduced to a smoldering plain of dead land. The mountains were vaporized and the forests were turned to ash. Nothing alive remained in the desolate land, but thankfully Gabriel saw that the city was fine from the use of her barrier. "Oh, thank goodness. Giarararar." The three, however, were shaken from their shocked stupor when the ground rumbled and the sound of a deep growl sounded above them. They turned and saw Issei in his giant ape form glaring down at them, no sense of reason in his baleful glowing red eyes. "Such raw power. It easily dwarfs that of high-class devils. It's even toppling with my own ... and oh ... it's getting stronger." Surzech thought with the slightest bit of panic, and it seemed Baraquil noticed the power coming off this monster as well. But for Gabriel, whom was staring up into the beast's red eyes, felt all doubt that she once had of this not being Issei being thrown to the wind. No one had that same look, that same primal ferocity and glaze as that single boy. "Oh ... what happened to you, Issei ... to make you become ... this?" The Seraph Angel was terribly saddened once she realized this was indeed the same cheerful boy she talked to not long ago. The very same that had caught her interest the moment he is born. Only now, gone was that happily smiling boy, and in its place was a monster of incredible proportions. What had happened to him? "This thing is no devil, is it some sort of yokai?" Baraquil asked just before the giant growled down at them, and then it raised its foot. Knowing what it was about to do, Surzech spoke. "Spread out." Just in time too, as Issei's giant foot came crashing down, causing yet another small quake along the cliffside. Much of the ground cracked and some began to slide, causing another landslide. Thankfully this time the landslide was halted by Gabriel's barrier. "Grog," he howled as the three floated in the air, and to their eyes Issei seemed confused as to where they went, which gave them enough time to plan. "I am not sure, Baraquil. It seems similar to the monkey yokai where Sun Wukong originates from, but this thing is very different from them. But knowing what this thing is should be the least of our concerns. We saw what it just did, and we can't risk that thing unleash another of its attacks," Surzech said, causing Baraquil to nod in agreement. Although it was a devil, he shared the same sentiment. This thing was a threat to the town, and to be more specific, his family. Gabriel seemed to be the hesitant one to fight the monster, which the other two noticed. "Oi, Gabriel. We may be enemies, but are you going to help us out or not?" Baraquil said, only to receive no response from the angel, who was solemnly staring down at the beast with sad eyes. "Oh ... hyoudou ... why did you become like this?" she said, causing Surzech's eyes to narrow once he heard that name. That's the second time she said that name. Hyoudou, is that the name of this creature? And if so, how does Gabriel know? The super devil thought to himself for a moment just before the beast finally caught sight of them. With its eyes narrowing in recognition, it snarled and went to grab them. "Rog. Dodge." And they did from the beast's grab. Gnashing his teeth, Baraquil let out a roar as he charged his hands with holy lightning. "All right, you monster, have a taste of this," he said before he reached forward with both hands, and then a medium-sized yellow circle formed. Pushing his magical power into his, Baraquil channeled his lightning and shouted, "Holy lightning, javelin." The circle glowed a brilliant shade of yellow before a giant sphere of pure holy lightning shot forth. The pure magical power in the orb was so destructive, so powerful, the sky itself began to darken by the lightning that pierced and rumbled through the sky. The sphere hurtled toward the giant ape whilst Gabriel was about to shout for him to stop. only for the beast to narrow its eyes before it brought up its hands and merely clapped both of them together once the orb was within reach. Boom! The orb exploded in of lighting, but it didn't seem to faze the beast the slightest. This shocked Barakwil at seeing one of his best attacks so easily bested by just a simple FC King clap. Surzetch moved through Issei's attempts to catch him and he flew above Issei and pointed both hands in the air. Let's see if you can withstand this. Power of destruction, ruin the extinct. Above the Satan a medium-sized red runic circle appeared which then glowed dark red. Soon enough red spheres with blackish tint began to form, some being the size of golfs and others the size of baskets. Bringing down his hand, Surzetch frowned down at the beast and willed his spheres to act. Go. With that command the spheres moved, moving incredibly fast. The spheres acted by the movement of Surzetch's hand, and as they were about to slam into the giant's face they quickly spread out. All of them covered the giant beast's surroundings and Surzetch acted as he willed the spheres to attack. Some moved below the ape and struck jaw, exploding upon impact, while other impacted with the beast's legs, waist, and torso. Did you get him? Barakwil said as the three looked upon the giant pillar of smoke that once stood a giant ape of carnage. However, as the ground shifted, Surzetch's eyes narrowed. No, I didn't. He was proven correct as the smoke was blown away by the giant's nose. The giant's body was smoking with small patches of its fur burned away, but no lethal injuries were noticeable, which didn't bode well for Surzetch as the Satan felt a bad feeling fall in the pit of his stomach. That had a good chunk of my demonic power in it, and that was the power of destruction itself. And this thing is barely even scratched. Surzetch's move, Barakwil said, making the redhead blink, but he looked to see the ape about to reach for him, yet in the nick of time Gabriel appeared in front of him. Two spears of light in hand which she then threw at both hands. They exploded, upon which had no visible damage. But it did their job as she pushed Surzetch aside and she flew away as the ape roared at the two. Thanks for the save, Gabriel. The woman just nodded, but it was apparent to him that she is struggling with something, as if she was hesitant to fight this thing for whatever reason. Rearing back his head, Issei let out another, but much less powerful roar which was aimed at the three that dared to stand in its path, openly objecting his path, defying him of destroying all that had hurt him. Rag! The roar caused the ground to rupture and trees to uproot, but the three supernatural beings were able to hold their ground. But it was strange to them, especially to both Surzetch and Gabriel, who both noticed that there was something in that roar. There was the rage, the hatred and anger, but here was also a deep-rooted despair and sorrow as well. It was as if the beast in the super devil's eyes was crying out at an injustice done to it. It feels like this thing ... is sad ... but why? I know I heard it. Could it have been affected by the stray devils in some way? It did just kill them, I am sure ... Did my negligence cause this? He thought, and he truly didn't want to believe that thought, but it was festering at the very depths of his mind, that this whole thing was his fault. Gabriel looked upon the sight that had once been high out to Issei, and her head lowered, causing her blonde hair to shadow her eyes, but it was clear that tears started to fall from her face. The level of sadness she felt from that single roar had made her soul tremble. Her will was quivering in hesitance to either fight or find a way to help Issei. But as she looked at the devastation of Issei's attack and the power within it, she knew her barrier would not be able to withstand such an attack. And the entire city of Jin was full of human lives. Hundreds, thousands of people were in that city and currently were all in danger due to an enraged Hayao Issei who was clearly not in his right mindset. It was a situation of duty as a seraph and an angel. The duty to protect the lives of the many was easily outweighing the life of one, no matter how much that one life was starting to mean to her. I am sorry, Issei-kun, but I can't let you harm these people. I can tell you are not in the right state of mind, and whatever made you into this must have hurt, terribly so. But, I am sorry. However, I have to stop you here. She thought tears falling, but a determined expression soon appeared. Barakwil soon shouted over the growling Issei as he began charging holy lighting all throughout his body. Attack together. We have to defeat or at the least subdue this thing. Give it everything you got, he said before placing both hands to his sides. They soon formed very large yellow runic circles which glowed yellow. Holy lightning, twin spears, he said, and as the sky darkened to a menacing black, two oversized spears of pure holy lightning formed. The two spears were length of about 50 feet appeared, and they coursed with pure raw holy lightning. He lifted his hands and reared his arms back in preparation while Surzetch's gaze narrowed before he put his hands forward and formed the red runic circle once more. Very well, power of destruction, obliteration. Commanding his inherent ability, the Satan formed a much bigger and more volatile sphere of red and black demonic energy. It grew and grew till it was 5x bigger than that of Surzetch himself. A bead of sweat fell from his face as he controlled the chaotic energies built up in this sphere, but then he raised his hand and clenched it. This caused the sphere to compress itself, smaller and smaller till it reached the size of a basket, but the backlash of it caused a shockwave around him. Thankfully, we're targeting the beast away from the city and all that's behind him and just empty land for miles on end. Good thing too, I haven't used this technique for a good few centuries, and the destructive capabilities of it are truly out of this world. Powering her hands, Gabrielle flew above the two so she was in front of the monster's snarling face. Her determined azure blue orbs bore back into glowing hate-filled BLD red orbs. She then reached out with both hands up into the sky, and soon all of the sky was becoming filled as a giant golden runic circle that began to light up the whole area around them for miles on end. Divine art, heavenly sword, she said, and soon that giant mega circle glowed gold before a single giant sword made of pure holy energy was assimilated. Its size easily matched Issei's own, and its power was tremendous, splitting the very sky and sundering the very atmosphere of the earth itself. Its brilliant shade of gold and white illuminated the skies and much of the planet itself. From even outer space a brilliant spark of light could even be seen. But it was the combined presences of all three supernova attacks that was affecting the area. The sky was jet black, and the wind howled in agony at all three powers being used. The already ruined cliffside was growing increasingly unstable by the major power output of all three legendary figures. Issei, in his unconscious yet instinctive state of mind, could feel the threatening pressure of all three attacks. They were going to try and hurt him. Stop him from killing all those that had hurt him. No, his inner demon, the inner beast dwelling within his primal BLD, roared defiance. Pulling up its massive arms, Issei rose to the challenge by beating his chest, like that of a true gorilla. Rag! Roaring out in defiance, the giant ape surged out, gathering up all the energy that coursed through its being, pulling the powers from its very soul. The beast's body soon exploded into a pillar of BLD red energy. His stomach bulged before the bulge went to his cheeks, causing them to expand to great proportions. His giant maw cracked open, letting out wisps of smoke, but then its mouth began to open more, revealing that it was building up another one of his destructive energy beams. But this was one different. Instead of the white bluish energy it once was, this one was just dark crimson with a blackish hue. The sheer destructive power of it alone made all three begin to swear nervously at the sheer density of that power. It easily made his last one pale considerably in comparison. Chiarrar. The giant ape let out a low growl as the energy built up within its jaw began to FLC whilst his body prepared itself to fire. So too did the three of them, but just as they were about to do it, and undoubtedly caused an uncountable amount of damage. The giant ape's eyes widened before its left arm completely out of nowhere nailed him in the chin, causing the beam to fire prematurely. The ground shattered as a giant crimson beam of pure destruction shot up into the sky. Easily piercing the atmosphere, the beam continued on before it imploded far above them all. For miles and miles on end, the once blackened sky was instantly cleared as a massive explosion of light rocked the very planet. Its rays of destruction reached far and wide, across the seas and reaching other continents. What the? Barakwil stuttered in shock, and the other two couldn't blame him either. While they were still ready to unleash their attacks, they were also still shocked at what they just witnessed. It happened right out of nowhere, but just as Issei was about to unleash complete chaos upon them, his own arm acted and hit him square in the jaw with the seemingly intent to divert the attack from them. Gabrielle remained determined, but the smallest FLC of hope FLC in her eyes. Maybe just maybe Issei was showing signs of gaining control. Maybe this was him trying to fight back. What none of them knew though was that the cause of this was something much deeper and much more serious than they could have possibly imagined. For deep within Issei's inner mind, down into the depths of his soul, the heavenly Welsh dragon, D-Drag, in all its BLD red glory, growled and snarled at the other entity residing within its partner's soul. Ever since he lost contact with Issei, he had been doing all he could to control the mass outbreak of Issei's powers he once had in his first life. That had gone fairly well, but the eruption of his emotional trauma combined with the unleashing of alien heritage tripped his control by the slightest margin, which had caused an anomaly. Said anomaly was staring back at him with BLD red eyes and its menacing growl that didn't even affect the ancient dragon the slightest. It was the same form Issei had turned into when he looked at the full moon, and so far he'd been wrestling over control of Issei's power and help his partner break free of his enraged primal state. Which wasn't easy considering this thing was monstrously powerful and its strength was equal to its endurance. This was from D-Drag's guess the representation of Issei's alien heritage. But soon D-Drag growled, "I will not let you control Issei anymore, you wretched cur. I will not let you have Issei destroy his own world. The regret he would suffer would be immeasurable. So bear witness, your doom, monster." Roaring out, D-Drag flew head-on, colliding with the beast, and soon his whole body coiled around the ape. His tail tying up the ape's own tail and legs together. Wrapping his arms around the ape, he enclosed his wings around him and the ape and went for its throat. "And by my name as the Red Dragon Emperor, I will take you down." And he struck his massive fangs, dug into the ape's neck, and held on with a steel-like clench. The beast roared in pain and it struggled to break free, but D-Drag's determination to break Issei free of this thing's instincts was far too strong. He was determined to save his partner, to help his nakama at all cost. Whatever that cost may be. Tearing into the ape's throat, D-Drag let it loose and roared within the depths of Issei's soul as his body began to glow from red to a dark crimson. Outside world. Rag. The great ape roared before its left arm came back SWNG, nailing himself in the face once again. It soon followed up with punch to its abdomen, causing it growl before it turned its gaze on its own arm. Growling, it went and bit onto its forearm, drawing BLD and crushing bone, but the arm continued on by ramming its fit into the ape's skull. Dazed by the hit, the ape stumbled and began to fall off the cliff, luckily on the opposite end of Jun. It's hurting itself, Surpass commented as they watched the beast literally attack itself, and it seemed whatever had come over the beast was winning. It was causing more self-injuries than any of them had been able to do. They had long dispersed their attacks due to the area becoming increasingly more unstable by the combined pressure of the attacks and the premature release of the beast's own attack. Indeed, whatever is happening, it's helping us immensely. But be wary of Gabriel, what are you doing? Barakwil shouted as he and Surpass saw the angelic woman fly down to where that beast had fallen down at. But neither of them could understand the maelstrom of emotions going through Gabriel at the moment, who was watching the ape fight itself more intensely. Nay, they couldn't understand her worry, her hope, her sorrow and sadness for the boy that was inside that monster that was chaos incarnated. Despite her little time in spending with him physically, she knew that spiritually the boy had a kind yet scarred heart. His very existence piqued her interest, and his troubled soul had warranted her attention more than once. His eyes were seasoned like that of a warrior that had fought plenty of life and death battles. Eyes like that did not belong with a child his age, and yet when she saw his eyes it was like she was looking into a beacon of hope that she had long since thought had died when her father, God, was killed. And now that she saw him, Issei, in such pain, so much pain to have triggered this strange transformation tore at her heartstrings. The tears came freely as she saw such a kind soul be reduced to such a state, filled with so much pain and anguish. The ground rumbled as she set foot a few good feet from the struggling great ape. It was currently fighting against itself, but it was futile. Soon enough its right arm acted against the ape's will and started pulverizing its face while the left had the ape in a chokehold. Gabriel felt both Barakwil and Surpass come down as they watched the beast literally destroy itself by some unknown force. But then something strange began to happen. Before their very eyes the ape began to stand up, but it was gripping its head. It let out grunts and growls as its nails dug into its bloodied skull. It stumbled forward and back again as its grunts turned into snarls. But then it reared back its head and let out a roar. R-A-A-R-R-R-G-G-G-H-H-H. Thankfully the three were prepared to keep themselves stable on the ground, but they watched in alert as the beast's body erupted into a familiar pillar of crimson energy. Yet shockingly enough, the crimson energy began to change. The crimson hue began to turn darker, but it was the ape's own body that shocked them. For it was changing. The brown fur surrounding its body was starting to turn different colors, from a dark brown to black and then a deep shade of dark crimson, and the changes went all the way to its tail. Its ears became more pointed and its fangs were turning into much fiercer and more defined fangs. Its bloody red eyes were wide open, but they were slowly curring to a shade of emerald. The changing ape's body soon exploded again, with its energy soon melding with its body, creating a crimson blazing aura engulfing all of its body, like a cloak of crimson and gold fire. It was magnificent yet terrifying at the same time. For the sheer magnitude of power coming from the ape now, it was too much, far too much. This level of power, it exceeds my true form in sheer quantity, Surpass thought with increasing apprehension and the slightest bit of fear in his normally calm blue-green eyes. He could feel a bead of sweat trail down his face as all three of them were pressed down by the megaton of power coming off the ape. You're fighting it. Fight it, Issei-kun. I know you can overcome this, Gabriel thought as she watched the transforming ape that was Hayao Issei continue to struggle. And as if her thoughts were answered, the beast started roaring before its whole body started to glow completely crimson. Its body began to shrink down and down until it was becoming a humanoid shape, and to Gabriel's happiness she could faintly see the characteristics that made Issei. However, that brief moment of joy was soon shattered when a powerful booming voice echoed all across the battlefield. Solar flare. Alerted, the three looked up only to see a blinding white light sear into their eyes, causing them to quickly cover their gaze from the blinding white light. What's with this light? Is it an ambush? They could hear Barakwil shouting, but none could do nothing as they were temporarily blinded by the surprise attack. However, Gabriel felt a presence appear where Issei was, and fearing the worst she turned and despite her pain tried to stop whoever it was that was reaching Issei. Her body reacted on instinct. But all she saw as her eyes opened was a humanoid figure with green skin, beady black eyes staring down at her before whatever it was disappeared. And her outstretched hand grasped at nothing but air. No, and at that moment as the light died down and the devil and fallen angel were able to see again, all they saw before them was a giant empty crater where once stood a giant monstrous ape and currently tearing up Gabriel. That would be the last time Earth would ever see the former mortal, Hayao Issei, for a good long time. But the scars left in his wake shall forever be remembered in the hearts and minds of those of the supernatural. None had been left unscathed. Earth had not been the only one shaken by the release of such cataclysmic power. So much power that it threatened to destroy the Earth itself. For all the realms had felt that monstrous power. But there was an even greater special happening that was happening in all the realms, and they were all linked to Hayao Issei. Underworld Gremory Castle. Then Alana Gremory sighed sadly as she sat at a bedside, worry marring her appealing features. Her flaxen long hair was disheveled from being a nervous wreck. Her blue-green eyes were filled with panic and worry as they looked upon the trembling and whimpering mess that was her pride and joy. It was of a girl around 6 years of age with long crimson red hair with her eyes and features, but currently her eyes were closed and the child's face was scrunched up as if she were in some type of pain. Oh Rias, my dear, what is wrong? You won't wake up and yet you're in so much pain. Please open your eyes for mommy. Please. Tears began to leak from the woman's eyes as her words were unanswered yet again. Her daughter, her appealing little girl, just kept trembling, tossing and turning in bed. She'd been doing this for a good 3 hours straight, and it seemed to happen at that exact moment when that huge immeasurable power came down upon all of the underworld and its denizens. That's when she broke into this state. Oh Rias, please come back to us, come back to your family, she said while trying to soothe her daughter with all the motherly affection she could give. But the pain Rias Gremory was feeling at the moment ran far deeper than Venelana could imagine. It was the pain of the soul itself. Within the mind of said Rias Gremory, the little girl was panicking as all around her was just a sea of fire that never seemed to stop burning. However, in the middle of it all she stood alongside a man with brown hair and brown eyes. She knew this man. His appearance brought her the strangest amounts of joy. Yet the dull, lifeless glaze in his brown eyes was making the young Gremory heiress cry amidst the sea of fire. Why why is this happening? Why am I seeing these things? Why do I know you? Issei, Kun, these memories. I don't. She struggled to speak as she gripped her head. She clenched her eyes shut and tried to block out all sound as her mind was bombarded with memories of this man beside her. Memories she had never experienced came flooding throughout her body and into her brain. All the joy, happiness, and love she felt through the memories came flooding back. These couldn't be her memories, and yet she saw someone that looked like her. No, it was her going through so much with this man. Issei. Issei, she shouted out in desperation as her eyes popped open. Only to her horror she saw the Issei before her turn to her, his cold, dead brown eyes staring back at her. But then he just combusted into flames. But before she could even utter a word, the flames swirled into a giant mass that soon formed a monstrous visage that resembled something akin to the deepest, darkest creatures of the abyss. And Rias screamed as all she knew, all she loved was consumed by fire. But it was on the outside that she blearily woke up to see her mother's worried gaze. But all she could mutter was just a few short words before tears began leaking from her eyes. Issei and don't. This must have been one powerful creature to have done so much damage, spoke Michael, Archangel, leader of the Seraph and current god of heaven. The blonde stood atop the ruined cliffside that had been a battleground not too long ago. His eyes turned surveying the damage of the epicenter of what was once a battlefield. In all honesty, seeing all the destruction painfully reminded him of the Great War, and the destruction is caused all over the three realms. Seeing this reminded him of that fact, which made it all the more concerning that there was something out there that held this level of power to cause such destruction. Indeed, but I can say it proves something. Don't you see, Michael? This thing was fended off by Gabriel, Surzech, and Baraquil, 3 people of 3 different races that have been at war for many millennia. It just goes to show that maybe there is hope for peace between us. Another man spoke at his side, and if it were any other situation, he and Michael would be seen as enemies right then and there. The man in question had the appearance of a male in his 20s with black hair and golden bangs in the front along with facial hair. This man was Azazel, current Governor General of the Fallen Angel race and of the Grigori organization. Michael seemed to ponder on Azazel's words with a hum that maybe Devil, Angel, and Fallen Angel for the first time actually worked together to face a threat to them all. It is a very rare occurrence, that much is certain, and it may, as you say, prove something for us all in the future. But as of now we have much more important matters to deal with, don't you agree? He said, causing Azazel to nod in agreement. Their eyes took in all the damage for as far as the eye could see, and they knew it was still nothing compared around the globe. True, I'm getting reports of mass hysteria across the earth about those that captured the explosion in the Earth's atmosphere. We're doing what we can to erase all evidence and memories of it from the eyes of humans. But it is proving to be a taxing effort nonetheless, he said with a sigh, causing Michael to chuckle a bit. I see. Well, I can send out a few of my own to help ease this burden. This is after all an international incident of the supernatural world, and humans have no need to be a part of it. Agreed, and you can expect our help as well. They heard a voice. Both turned to see Surzech Lucifer walking up to them, but along with him was Seraphal Leviathan, another of the current generation of Satans. Seraphal had the appearance of a young appealing woman with long black hair which was tied in twin ponytails. Her sapphire blue eyes were taking in all the damage that had been caused by the battle with slight amounts of awe and curiosity. She had a healthy pale complexion and a childlike body, but had a good sized bust. She wore a black long-sleeved button-down dress shirt with a pink ribbon tied around her neck, which was under the flip-down collar of her shirt. Finally below, she wore a black skirt that went just above her knees, crew-length socks, and black dress shoes. Azazel and Michael's brow quirked up in surprise, which Surzech caught, and he smiled. As you said, this is an incident of all the 3 factions, and I will take full responsibility on the Devil's behalf, he said, although the 2 caught something in his tone that made them suspicious. It was as if he was hesitant about something yet didn't let it show on his face the slightest. I see. We welcome all the help we can get, but I'm surprised you're up and about. You 3 did just fight whatever it was, and while you don't have any physical injuries, I wager it was still an exhausting one. Michael said, only to get a slight laugh from Surzech that before they looked towards Serafal, who seemed a tad drawn by all the damage that was done around. And it's a surprise to see you here as well, Leviathan-san. I wager Surzech contacted you and the other Satans about the situation. Serafal, upon hearing Michael, turned to the Archangel and let out a happy smile. Yup. But Ajutan and Faltiane were too busy, and besides I wanted to see what did all this, she answered, causing the two to nod while Surzech sighed. That's how she addressed their fellow Satans, Ajuka and Falbium. Then again, that's how she addressed almost everyone. But looking around them, the four took in the barren, broken battlefield. All the damage and destruction caused by the battle was being repaired by a joint effort, surprisingly consisting of angels, devils, and the fallen angels of the Grigori organization. They were doing the repairs, returning the landscape back the way it once was, and though they were still enemies, it was still a sight to see. All of them working together towards one goal. The group of four walked through, surveying the damage done as Michael questioned Surzech. So, is there anything you can tell us about what you, Baraquil, and Gabriel faced out here? For whatever it was, I could feel its power from even the heavens itself, he asked, causing Azazel to nod agreement. Same, and I'm sure many others did as well. The underworld sky was even started to blacken all across the realm, as if a massive thunderstorm was coming to pass. Azazel said, with Michael nodding in agreement. The same thing happened to heaven, and while it had passed, it still unnerved everyone, including himself, who had such power to affect the three realms like that. Surzech seemed to sigh. Honestly, I am not entirely sure myself where it came from, because all I remember was that it appeared just after a massive roar erupted from this area. The shockwave alone was just staggering, and afterwards a pillar of crimson energy exploded out from the cliffside, and it was then it appeared. It didn't just appear out of thin air though, it grew into that state. At first it looked similar to those of the monkey Yaokai where Sun Wukong originates, but the appearance of this thing was far too different to be a part of them. What we fought was this creature, about the size of 100 feet tall or more so. It resembled an ape, yet had different characteristics of different parts of the simian species. He explained to them, causing them both to look at him surprised. From what Surzech just said, this thing was an ape-like giant, titan creature with characteristics of other simians. And going from what they could see and felt, it held an enormous amount of destructive and raw power. Unknown to them, Serafal's eyes lightened up at this bit of information before she began to ponder on this herself. So Asaru-chan did this. But where did he go? Her unasked question was answered as Azazel asked Surzech, and how did it escape you three? I mean, not to sound rude, but there was you, Baraquil, and even Gabriel fighting this thing. What stopped you from defeating or capturing it? He asked. Only to their shock and Serafal's increasing interest, they saw a haunted look appear in Surzech's eyes at that moment. I am not sure myself, Azazel. One moment we were about to clash with it, with some of our strongest techniques. It was charging up a second energy blast, but so much more powerful, dare I say powerful enough to destroy the earth completely. But then it just started beating itself up, and then the last thing I saw was a bright, blinding flash of light, and after that the monster was gone. This caused the two to frown and worry. Despite the strange actions of the monster and Surzech's words, it was still a troubling creature to be left alive and loose on the world. It could upset the balance of the world with its destructive power. If this creature truly had that much power and left unchecked, would prove to be a force to be reckoned with and to be feared. Even now with it gone, the kingdom of mankind itself was in danger, because should it pop up again and in such an enraged state, the sheer amount of catastrophe would be insurmountable. Yet Serafal felt a smile come along her face, not one of exuberance nor happiness, but one of just raw excitement. If what Surzech has just said was right, then this creature was still out there recovering, and because of this she was wanting to see it for herself. Not by an enemy standpoint, but as one of pure interest in something that hadn't been seen before just pop up out of nowhere. And right in the middle of human civilization at that, it astounded her just as much as it piqued her curiosity. Of course she wouldn't say that out loud. I see, Azazel hummed as the group passed by many of their subordinates, that is until Michael spoke up. By the way, Azazel, where's Baraquil? I imagined him to be here to speak more on this creature. He asked, only to get a shrug from the man, but the frown on his face was evident that he was a bit apprehensive. He sent word to me that he was currently with his family, ensuring their safety above all. The man values his family's safety before anything else, and has been since they've been attacked by a number of those of the church. People that held a grudge against him due to those attacks, and with this arising monster he's keeping their safety at an all-time high. He answered, although his eyes cut towards Michael. The Archangel saw this and knew what the man was implying, and he sighed a bit mournfully. I recognize this, but I cannot fully control my people like the true God could, you know this. Those that choose to allow their hatred for Baraquil to extend and attack his family, an innocent woman and child, deserve nothing more than punishment. I can only promise those that do will be excommunicated from the church and their souls to be sent to purgatory as punishment, he said with a rare moment of coldness, speaking with the voice of a leader. The voice of the Archangel Michael. Azazel didn't seem fine with just that, but knew that's all Michael could do. It was up to him and Baraquil to stop those attacks should they get any more severe. Attacking out of grudge against those you hate was one thing, but attacking the family of your hated target, a family of innocents, was something else entirely. I guess that's all I can hope for, he responded, and the four fell into a silence, but Michael's gaze turned and saw Gabriel standing at the edge of the cliff. just looking out at the city with an ever-present forlorn expression. Though she didn't look the least bit hurt by the battle, she hadn't spoken a single word since then. It made him wonder what had happened to make Gabrielle be so silent. But as he thought about it, how did she end up in this when she was charged with watching over the mortal, Hayao Issei? It was the first time that he's seen Gabrielle ignore everyone, even him, in favor of being so silent. What happened to you, sister? Unknown to Michael, Gabrielle's mind was far more troubled than he could imagine. The Seraph Angel was gazing out to the city, his home. The city that was the hometown of the one who stole her interest. The city that was nearly destroyed by his very own hands. Her blue eyes, once bright and full of life, were dull as she watched the forces of angels, fallen angels, and devils work tirelessly to repair the damage done and erase the memories of everyone in the city of what they witnessed. But she just couldn't find it in herself to care that much anymore. She couldn't explain it, but now that he was gone, she just couldn't find herself to care for much of anything. It was as if when he was taken, all that she was taken with him. A bitter smile began to make way on her face as she thought about it. Yes, it seemed she was starting to realize just how precious he was to her. It was for a few moments that she met him, and yet it was enough for her to see what she's read and saw from a distance was all true. Hayao Issei was been a paradox to her, a puzzle she wanted to figure out. He may have lived the life of a somewhat normal mortal, but she had witnessed puzzling things about him others seemed to shrug off. He was born with an abnormal muscular structure that hasn't been seen in all of human history, which predated, as far as she knew, the existence of her creator, God's own existence. There was also the fact that his personality fluctuated between a child and rare instances of something else, someone much older. It was rare, but she had seen one of those instances when he was fighting in the tournament not long ago. It seemed as if something had been bothering him, and when she saw it in his form, she knew he was intent on ending it quickly before something happened. There was also the fact that she saw that Issei had an abnormal physical growth and physical fitness, which she would account to as even more abnormal muscular structure. He also inherited the legendary Longinus boosted gear and the holy sword, a scalon, two objects that opposed one another in sheer existence. But the most puzzling and in her mind the most gripping was his eyes. Those were not the eyes of a child, for they had seen many life and death battles. There was a saying that the eyes were the windows to one's soul, and Gabrielle believed that entirely now that she'd seen it for herself. Issei's soul was scarred and marred. It wasn't pure like a child should be. It was usually FLC curring to a gray to a near dark gray, and a good amount of scars, deep scars, cut deep into his soul. It's why she wanted to learn more about him, to get to know the human, Hayao Issei, and the drive to do so was so strong too. Yet then the image of his changed form, his roar of agony, hatred, rage, and sorrow echoing deep within her ears, his glowing red eyes glaring down at them all, at her, with nothing but the intent to kill. It made her want to cry. It really did, to see Issei in such a way. She knew it was him because she could tell by his energy, and the feel the monster gave off was similar to Issei's. What had caused him to become that? What had sent him off the edge and into the abyss to make him become that destructive monster? And who dared to cause him so much pain? She thought, with her frown becoming a scowl, her hand turning into a fist. Emotions swirled up inside her, incredibly dangerous ones surged from within her, zest smoldering within her, her soul whispering to find out the one who led to causing Issei so much pain. If Gabrielle had her wings out at that moment, she would have seen them FLC cur on and off from golden wings to jet black. But now he's gone, she thought, wrapping her arms around herself. The sight of Issei battling against himself, eventually reverting back only for her vision to be blinded at the last second by a bright light. And the last thing she saw was a green-skinned humanoid taking Issei right in front of her. It absolutely made her livid to know that Issei was taken from her just after going through what he did. She tried desperately to find out where he had been taken, but his energy signature just dropped off the radar. There was no telling if he was okay, if he was dead, or he was simply being experimented on. She didn't know, and she just hoped that he was alive out there. It rekindled her FLC-curring hope that she would see him again and hopefully be able to take a step forward to be at his side this time. Again, if she had her wings out, they would be FLC-curring colors again, only it took longer to change back as that single thought lingered in her mind. Blinking, Gabrielle toyed with that thought before pushing it away with a slight flush on her cheeks. No. There is no way I'm feeling that way towards him, right? I mean, he is a child. Okay, maybe not with his soul being far older. But GH. The Seraph of Heart slapped her cheeks to try and rid herself of those thoughts. She couldn't afford to let her rampant thoughts get to her, no matter how much they egged at her. We found something. Thankfully, she heard a few of Michael's subordinates yell out, and she, along with the group of four, turned to see an angel waving at them from a wreckage a good bit away. Becoming curious, she went along with the others to see the angel working with fellow angels plus a few fallen angels and devils. She, Michael, and the two Satans came upon a wreckage of trees which were torn asunder, ripped right out of the ground by Issei's transformation. But it also consisted of what was once a foundation, a human building, and what they found once the trees were removed was both gut-wrenching and saddening. Humans, so many humans, no matter the age, young and old, were everywhere, and all of them were dead. Just by looking at them, they could all tell with grim realization that they had been dead for a good while and surprisingly hadn't been killed by the crushing of the trees. But the sight was one of horror. Children even were dead, seemingly have been crushing by wood or bisected by the waist by snapping wood. It was a sight that made them pale considerably. Although they had seen their fair share of bloodshed and death, it was still strong to swallow. Especially with the amount of blood and gore covering the area, it was a nauseating and gory sight to behold. Too many lives were lost here, too many young ones died here before they could experience life. But something was strange, and Seraphol made this apparent as she narrowed her eyes. Something's wrong here. I sensed the lingered presence of stray devils, 3 distinctive ones. They're old, but they were here, she said, causing Michael and Azazel's eyes to narrow. But there was 2 different reactions from Surzech and Gabriel. Surzech's eyes widened in shock at what he just heard, and upon confirming it for himself his shock just grew. Could it be? The same strays he'd been charged to hunt down and kill had done this slaughter. That once growing ember of doubt began to grow once he felt this for himself. He bowed his head a tad with his long red bangs shadowing his eyes. This was something Seraphol noticed, but chose to remain silent, thinking it was out of respect for those that were dead. But Gabrielle was a different story. Her eyes were wide once she heard that tidbit of information, and she silently glanced towards Surzech, recalling as to why he was sent here in the first place. I'm here to hunt down a couple of stray devils that have betrayed a number of noble clans, including my own. They escaped the underworld and were reported to have escaped into this city, and I was sent to take care of them personally. Recalling his words, Gabrielle began to piece it all together, and her eyes began to narrow and narrow further and further as she looked at the downtrodden Surzech. But before she could speak, she felt her feet hit something, and she looked down, and what she saw was, to her disgust, was 2 blood stumps that were the heads of humans. However, once her eyes adjusted to the lighting, her eyes widened in true horror once she recognized these humans. These weren't just any humans, these were Issei's parents. Their faces, one smiling in pride for their son and happily greeting her with kindness at the tournament, were frozen in an expression of utter terror. No, please no, don't tell me ... Is this what set him off ... Is this what pushed Issei over the edge? Oh God, Issei. She easily pieced it all together. There couldn't have been any other explanation, and she trembled once she fully realized the implications of it. The stray devils Surzech was supposed to have killed had either attacked this building of humans or tracked down Issei to this location, waited for him and his parents, and they striked, leading to this massacre and the death of his parents, which led to her realizing one thing. Issei had witnessed it firsthand, and that had been the trigger which set him off, the final push that threw him off the edge and caused him to become that. Salty tears began to form in her eyes once she realized this, but quickly she turned her head and wiped them away. She didn't want anyone else seeing her this way. But Surzech will answer for this one way or another, she thought, her blue eyes smoldering with a slight golden color, which were now discreetly glaring at Surzech, who felt her smoldering, piercing glare, and he turned. And his eyes widened once he found Gabrielle, Seraph of Hearts, the strongest woman in heaven, glaring at him, and if looks could kill, he'd be 6 feet under by now. But then he realized, Gabrielle must have realized it as well, that the stray devils he was supposed to have killed did this. I really messed up this time. I should have listened, I should have killed those strays. Damn it. Gabrielle struggled to keep her emotions in check this time. She was truly debating whether to lash out and obliterate Surzech with all her power or remain as calm as she could be. Fortunately, she did, realizing that if she attacked him outright it'd land her in trouble with Michael, and pointing him out right here wouldn't be a good choice either, with a possible peace could be created with the 3 factions on the rise. It wouldn't look good if she attacked him out of anger for his negligence. Silently she stood on this and repressed her raging rage at Surzech and tried to look away from him. However, a red transportation circle flashed behind them, and they turned to see, to Surzech's surprise, his wife Graphia, but to his worry he saw a pained and saddened expression on her face. Graphia, he asked, only to see her close her eyes, but her words were enough to surprise Surzech and terrify him even more. Surzech, I apologize for the sudden arrival, but something has come up ... It's about your sister. There is something wrong with her. She's not acting herself. Lord and Lady Gremory have asked you to return as soon as possible, she said, causing him to stop and look at his wife with a wide-eyed gaze. Something's wrong with little Riatan. But I can't just leave this situation alone, he thought, and Seraphol saw his inner turmoil and slapped him on the back. Go on, Surzech-chan, and make sure little Riaz-chan is okay. Would be sad if little Sona-chan's best friend is sick. I'll take care of the rest. He looked to Seraphol and then to the others, and he was a bit relieved to see them give them a nod as well, but he felt a bit uneasy when he saw Gabrielle glare daggers his way, knowing full well why she was angry at him, as rightfully she should be. Thank you, Sira. I bid you all goodbye then, until next time. Now let's hurry, Graphia, he said, bidding the others goodbye, and he and his queen, wife left in the same fashion she appeared in. Watching them go, Gabrielle glared at where he once stood, adamantly thinking on how she should approach Surzech on this topic without accidentally reducing him to a pile of ashes. Gabrielle soon sighed before she looked out once again at the city of Jin being repaired and its citizens having their memories wiped of this whole incident, so they wouldn't remember that catastrophe that happened this night. They would never know the torture of one of their very own, the rage and sorrow of Hayao Issei that had nearly wiped out all of Earth. Bringing up her hands, she clasped them together in a prayer and looked towards the sky. Please, be okay, Issei. Please, if only Gabriel knew, the boy once known as Hayatu Issei would return, but not as the person who he once was. Unknown location. Mom dead. Get out of here. Run away. Issei shouted in desperate cries, trying in vain to reach his parents who were being cornered by them, those monstrous-looking devils. His parents seemed to hear him and turned, but it was far too late. He tried to run, pushing all he had into his little legs, but he wasn't getting anywhere. And he had to watch the devils who struck, cackling in glee as they hacked and tore into his parents. Ugh. His father's pained scream tore into his ears, ripped his heart to pieces. He could feel his soul beginning to wail. His eyes began to swell up in tears at the brutal display. BLD splattered the ground, their limbs being thrown to the wind only to be gorged on by the devils. Then he saw to his increasing terror Mother crawling out of the mass of BLD and gore, with only one arm and a single eye that was staring at him, asking him, why? Issei ... Sachai ... Why didn't you save ... us ... She spoke before the devil put his foot on his mother's head, causing Issei's rage to build up to an insurmountable degree. Get your filthy FC King feet off her. He cursed, he screamed out in pure rage, but the devil just smirked wickedly and began to put pressure on his mother's head. No, stop it. Prek, splurch. His mother's head exploded into BLD and gore right before Issei's eyes. The BLD of his mother splattered across his face. His eyes widened in horror as he saw the mutilated corpses of his dead parents fill his vision. The smell of BLD and torn flesh filled his nostrils and nearly made him churn up and puke. Slowly he looked up at the three stray devils, his body beginning to tremble, his eyes starting to dilate, his teeth beginning to lengthen and sharpen. Now it's your turn, boy. They lunged at his fore, but Issei's hand went to his clutching onto his skull, and then, only then did Issei feel what self-control he had slipped. His black eyes flashed to a smoldering shade of bloody crimson. You bastard, you filthy disgraceful pieces of trash. I will slaughter you all. Issei roared out, his voice altered, no longer was it the same, becoming deeper and more demonic. His world erupted into a sea of flames, swirling out of him like that of a maelstrom, leaking out from his eyes, nose and mouth. It went catching and gripping onto the devils, the intensity of the orange and red flames burning at their flesh and bone and setting their very souls ablaze. Issei crouched, glaring through the sea of fire, gnashing his now fangs at the devils with a level of hatred nigh anyone could understand. His hands cracked and clenched as his hair stood up straight. The fire burned at the very air around him, turning all things to ash. His crimson orbs flashed with anger, hatred, and power, pure raw power. Untamed, untapped power that was beginning to crush the devils before him. How dare these things? How dare they? How dare they? Die. Throwing his hand, he sent out a giant wave of fire onto them, which soon fell onto the devils, slamming into the devils, silencing their screams as the wave of fire engulfed their bodies, melting their flesh, causing their BLD to boil and blister and turn their bones to ash. Issei watched with a cold satisfaction as their very souls were reduced to ash before him. It was only then, as Issei watched in satisfaction, savoring in the death of those that murdered his parents, standing amongst the sea of fire conjured by just his hate and rage alone, that he felt something. Wake up, Gaki. He turned only to hiss in annoyance as a blinding white light erupted with his world of darkness and fire. Gasp. Issei's eyes snapped open and he raised up, gasping for air with sweat pouring from his face. Taking a moment to calm himself, he began to look around to notice that he wasn't in any place that he recognized. In fact, a lot of things in the room he was in was different from he was used. Where am I? He didn't expect anyone to answer him, but he was proven wrong when someone did. My home. Turning Issei, to his amazement, a rather tall figure who was garbed in the strangest of clothing. It looked like man from what he could tell. His clothing consisted of a white robe with a strange red kanji in the middle. On his shoulders a white-clothed pointed shoulder guards with a free-flowing white cane, while on his feet he wore what looked like orange pointed slippers of some sort. He looked up and was even more surprised to see a withered old wrinkled face of a man with pointed ears, and two antenna-like things protruding from his forehead. On his head was a white-clothed purple sphere-like object, while held in his hand was a long wooden cane. His skin was a dark green with what looked like pink patches running across his forearms. Then Issei finally regained his voice, and the first thing he could say was an intellectual, bravo kid. The man's beady black eyes narrowed him, looking down at him with no sense of sympathy nor pity, and then he just raised his hand in an FLC King motion. He FLC K'd his finger. And right then Issei felt a good amount of force hit his, making him bounce back, hitting his head on the wall before he rolled off the bed and onto the floor. Rubbing his forehead furiously, he glared up at the man. Oi. What the hell was that for? For being unaware of your surroundings, not noticing me until now, but mostly because I felt like it, he said to Issei's annoyance. Clenching his hands into fists, he glared at the impassive green man before him with all the anger he could show. He felt his muscles bulge unusually and began to feel power he hadn't once felt, but all he wanted at that moment was to punch something. Knowing that dream wasn't just that, a dream, and this guy hurting him and mocking him just made him angry. He just lost his FC King parents. He had a right to be pretty PSS. BSTRD. Clumsily he jumped out of bed to attack the man, but he easily diverted his attacks with a single hand before he grabbed his offending fist and threw him backwards, out the doorway. He felt his body slam harshly against a pristine square-tiled floor, but Issei quickly jumped up only to see the man right in front of him. His eyes widened at the sheer speed of this guy, but he didn't care and he just attacked. No longer in any form or guarded stance, he was just releasing all up his pent-up anger on the closest thing possible. And this guy made it clear how outmatched Issei was. You're sloppy, you are letting your emotions cloud your mind, your attacks have no reach nor power behind them. You are attacking like that of a simple sloppy street fighter and not like that of warrior. The green man commented lightly, causing Issei to curse before the man diverted his fists before nailed him across the cheek. Gods, the power behind it which sent him flying before his body slammed into the floor, cracking and shattering the tiles as Issei slid. Looking up, Issei's eyes were wide as he began to wipe away BLD from his mouth. What the hell? The power in the punch felt like one of Sereorg's punches. Who are you? Issei stood, albeit shakily, combined exhaustion and having his senses literally knocked back into his skull. But the man just ignored him, causing Issei to scowl before instinctively sliding into the same stance he used at the tournament. A stance that caused the man's beady black eyes to widen and glow with a sense of familiarity which Issei missed. Narrowing his eyes, Issei charged, dashing across the floor at speeds faster than he actually remembered. Crossing the distance he moved, with his leg coming into a sweep, but the man blocked it, but he used the momentum to spin around his head before bringing down his elbow. Yet again the guy stopped it with his palm, but Issei flipped frontwards and once his feet touched the floor he kicked off, cracking the floor in the process. Pushing as much strength into his legs and body he moved like a blur, faster than the eye could see. Throwing out a punch, like expected it was stopped, but Issei spun on his feet into the man's slight surprise move, left leg into a kick for his ribs. He missed the slight FLCK of the man's other hand. Bam! A small shockwave erupted from them as Issei's leg was stopped by the man's wooden cane, which made Issei's eyes go wide when he saw that. He put all his strength in that kick, yet it was stopped by this guy's frail-looking cane. This guy is strong. Very strong. It was a sudden realization Issei felt as he looked up to see beady black eyes which were staring right back at him. Staring at him, through him and reading him as if he were a book. That was better. He spoke, causing him to blink, but then Issei saw the man's wrist twitch, but he wasn't fast enough to react, and then he felt pain erupt from his legs. The wooden cane swooped down, knocking him off his legs and making him land on his back. He was about to get up, but he stopped once he felt the cane poking him in the forehead. But you still have much to learn, a green-skinned old man said, looking down at a glaring Issei. Impassively, he pulled up his staff and waited for Issei to stand back up, who wiped away his bloody busted lip. But as he caught his breath, the man tapped his cane on the floor, instantly restoring the floor around him, shocking Issei a good deal. However, it was not as much a shock as it was made aware of his surroundings. All around him he saw a circular, pristine, square-tiled floor with a few trees and bushes. Along with it to his left he saw a grand building built in a rather unique architecture. He then looked up at the man, who then spoke once more, just a few gruff words, but it was enough to surprise Issei nonetheless. As for my name, you can call me Kami, and this here is my lookout. Take it, and for this is going to be your home for the next few years. Hiya to Issei, last of the Saiyans, he said, making Issei's eyes grow wide as shock filled his very being. Oh yes, things were going to be very interesting for Issei now.